Boom. All right, I think I'm live. Sorry, everybody, I'm a few minutes behind. It's been a very busy morning and day, afternoon. Okay, as usual, everybody's been here. You know, I go through PTSD that people can't hear me. Can you hear me? So see how many people are in chat here. Oh, there's a couple people here. Cool. Joyce Hartman, thank you for being here. Mike Jones, thanks for being here. Jonaside, thank you for being here. Cryptoville, thank you for being here. Ursel, thank you for being here. Can you all hear me? I can hear. Ursel, thank you. Okay, cool. Hi, Jonaside, thank you. Lorianne, welcome. Aaron, welcome. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Right on. Very cool. I'll give it just a minute more to let everybody kind of log in or whatever, however it goes, and then we'll go over some of this information. And this time, I'm endeavoring this to be a much shorter live than ever before. Not ever before, just the last time I said that, it still went 3 hours. So this time I have everything kind of succinctly down. And we're doing this more as just it's something interesting, you know? And I really want to point something out. And you all will probably hear me start really emphasizing this more and more frequently, which is, it's not about being right or wrong. It's more about we've all experienced something different and to different degrees in what we've experienced. So it's not about being right and wrong. And I'm seeing that happening so much, in so many ways. I mean, yeah, there's some things I won't bend on, like sometimes when I hear bad advice, though, that's going to hurt people, certain things that cause them to be earthbound or something to that degree, I will say something. And I will never just go for that and willingly participate in knowing other people's suffering and causing other people's suffering just based on something I heard without experience, without true knowledge. I'm not going to do that. So otherwise than that, though, when it comes to especially experiences, it's not about are the SSP people wrong? Are the people that are positive contactees wrong? Are the people that are dream engineered wrong? It's not about that. It's about trying to figure out what's going on and putting everything together and making a real tapestry of it. So, sorry, I'll go down and want to just greet everybody that's here before I get started. I appreciate everybody who took time to come. Because I don't know if I advertised this one really good enough like I have all the others. Roger, what's happening, man? Sorry, my brother there. All right. So anyway, hope everybody's doing really good. And also, I don't know, greetings to everybody. Appreciate everybody coming. So last time I tried to give everybody just a second to check in before I get started because I noticed last time a lot of people missed the first things that I said. But this time I started so late that it shouldn't be a problem, right? This time I'm going to endeavor to show you the pictures that I have. I don't have nearly as many as last time, so hopefully I can do that in a fashion that won't be completely disruptive. I think I'm getting a little bit better with it, actually. Let's see. Okay, so that'll be the first one I'll show. And when I'm ready, I'll be able to just click on it and do it this time. So make it easier. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. Again, I appreciate everybody being here. All right. And something else, the last live I did last week, I got really busy right after, and a few people commented and I didn't get to reply. I'm trying to really reply to everybody who says something on there or make a comment or try to add something, but I got far behind and there's several people that commented and I never got to it. So please forgive me. It was not intentional, like trying to ignore anybody. It really was not like that. It was just I got too busy and haven't got a chance to get back and get on there and try to get back with everybody. But I appreciate everybody who takes time to comment, everybody that comes to the chat. And the fact I'm still doing these lives is an absolute miracle, because God knows I did not want to, and I was kind of against them from the beginning. So, but it's been it's been a good experience. And I think the interaction is really cool in a way, so it's not at all what I expected. I've enjoyed doing it. So we'll start kind of from there. What's up, Jessica? What's happening? Thanks for coming. I was late. This text you actually, but thanks for coming. Okay, so that's my sign. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started so everybody can get bored and tune out. All right. So something I wanted to talk about that's it's something fun, but it's not fun. It's interesting, And sometimes it's about taking different perspectives and trying to tie them together knowledge-wise, and then find also a solution. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about here. And it's odd to say it in that context with this, but I think you'll get it. Okay, so the concept we're going to talk about is the Death Defiers. And I'm going to come at this Death Defiers from 3 different angles. So we'll go over each one of them, all right? And then we'll start talking about solutions and the little bit of clause that is in the death process contract, or whatever it is you want to call it, that maybe isn't emphasized enough. All right. So one of those will be the retaining of soul life memories, this life memories after death. So that's something we've talked about in some of the other videos, the other lives too. So we're going to tie that in with just this concept of the Death Defiers. All right. So the first time I had heard this concept and read this concept of the Death Defiers, it came from the angle of material that in 1987, when my brother had moved back from LA, lived in LA for many years. But when he came back, he had brought back books with him. And several of the books he brought back were from Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. All right. And I've messed around because, and some people got actually irritated at me at one point because I think that he's now known somehow as Osho, I think. But anyway, when I was when I was young and I saw the first book, and this is one of them here, okay, that my brother had bought back. This one in the Book of the Esoteric too, but this is one, and he had a couple others, but this one caught my attention. And if you notice that cat's face, that's Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. Is that not Osho now, who's known as Osho? He's long dead now. But the book was fascinating in terms of he presented things that were like looking techniques and stop techniques I'd heard about before, but not described in the way that he did them, as in looking techniques and stop techniques that stop your world. Okay, looking techniques that are looking methods that allow you to actually still the eyes. Once you still the physical eyes, that energy has to find a new pathway, and it's automatically through the endocrine system in the third eye. So it's systems like that and techniques like that he did. And I'm a brother. Look, I like techniques, yo. When I read something, and I like to try to take it and see how applicable it is if it's a technique here in the third dimension. So he offered a lot of those. All right. And in that book, and let me see if I can pull up one more that my brother had. Let's see. I think I can get it. I'm getting a little bit better with this, so just bear with me. One more small step for mankind each time. So here we go. And of the ones that my brother had, this would be another one that actually had caught my attention. All right. There you go. Excuse me. Yeah, right here. Okay, this is another one of the books that my brother had that caught my attention. He gave some techniques in this one too, and some different philosophies that turned me more onto what I was going to come into about the year following that, which would be Paramahansa Yogananda, and also Sri Yukteswar, and they are all talking. They're talking about different things with these techniques, and they were mentioning it. I think it might have been in this book. Don't quote me exact, but I think it was in this book that he started mentioning these gurus that had got such a mastery of pranayama yoga, is in Kriya yoga, but pranayama, the breath itself, the life energy, that they could actually retard the death process through constant cellular regeneration. And they talked about like there's one of these gurus that's on top of certain mountains, and there's a couple at certain places on the planet to help keep the like equilibrium and the harmonics of the planet together. So that's what they do, like taught in constant meditation. But in that way, they were like these death defiers that they use us. And you know, it's interesting when these people, when these individuals first came over, all right, they had a great deal of like the gurus that came over like in the 60s and the 70s. Most of them were able to do those things that were breaking physical laws. Like whether it was the ones that were stretching in the boxes or holding their breath underwater, they were doing these different things that were supernatural to a degree. All right, just really hard to duplicate. And that's one thing, and he's one of those. Now, the thing about Bhagwan here, aka Osho, is if you follow the story, really, you know, the brother was tripping a little. He got to kind of run in this one of those little, I guess you call it a cult, but there was, you know, all about the sex and a bunch of other things. Then there's somebody, part of his group, tried to poison a city water supply with something, and it caused a big deal. So there's, you know, there's stuff you can look up on that about old Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh when he was known as that, or as my friends, we all called him Raj. But anyway, the material he offered is quite interesting, honestly. So that's the first time I had heard of quote unquote, you know, these death defiers. But it was in the way in terms of like pranayama, kundalini energy, and that being used to regenerate the cellular structure constantly, being so in touch with creator that they did not deteriorate in that way. And you know, it's interesting when looking at the situation of Paramahansa Yogananda, and he sorry, I don't have a picture of his book up here, but he wrote autobiography of a yogi is really good. But in that book, he talks about kind of how you know, he was born awake in that way, and he had to wait time for his body to regenerate. But when considered, when talking about him, when he actually died, he had that it's a phenomenon. Oh, I forgot what it's called now, but it's when someone smells almost like rosaries and they've not been embalmed. He had something like that going on. Okay, that his body stayed like non-deteriorated until whatever they did to dispose of it. But anyway, that's just one of those interesting things about him when you look up about him. And he was pretty heavy too. I mean, Autobiography of Yogi is a great book. It really is. And he also kind of had a thing of spirituality he had started that was religious conformity. It was pretty good. Anyway. So, okay, so that's one concept of the Death Defiers I wanted to bring up in a way that is dealing with the Kriya Yoga pranayama system. All right, that's just one, and that's the first time I had come at least across material that was talking about that. Now, if we're going to take this and break it, kind of spread it out a little bit more, and the next time would be a few years later, around what, probably 90, I got turned on to the Carlos Castaneda material. And it's interesting to hear how much his work is coming up now in these quote unquote communities. That material's been around a long time. And at that point, it was about 90. He had written up to the Art of Dreaming. All right. So here, let's just since I'm going with the pictures, I might as well keep going now, because once I get done with that, it'll make it much easier. Okay, this is here is the Art of Dreaming book, so that everybody would just know, those of you that might not be familiar with who he is, just so that way you'll actually see a reference. There, Art of Dreaming by Carlos Castaneda. Okay, that's That's one. And there's another book I'll show a picture of too that he had a series. All right, those in it went beyond the ones I kind of quit after. God, what was it? The one after The Art of Dreaming. Oh, can't remember the name of it now, but I kind of lost interest after that. But the ones up to that, especially books like Tales of Power, really, really good information. And I've talked about with people before, say, oh, it was just fiction when he wrote everything. Perhaps. But then I'll ask him, I'll say, did you try any of the techniques that he offered in any of the books? Well, no. I said, well, I did a bunch of them. And why is it a lot of them consistently produce third dimensional results? And then that conversation kind of dies at that point. You know what I mean? Because that's when it gets real. And a lot of the techniques he presented are effective when you're dealing with the actual manipulation of perception of consciousness. So that's worthy information. All right. Concerning this concept of the Death Defiers, all right, in two books, he talks about Death Defiers. One would be The Power of Silence, and I'll pull a picture of that up here in a minute. But and the other one is this one, The Art of Dreaming. So in fact, let me pull up The Power of Silence first, and we'll talk about those Death Defiers. Then we'll go into the Art of Dreaming one, because they're different, and I think it's worthy of noting why they're different and what exactly it is that we're dealing with. All right. All right. Sorry, I'm getting faster than it. You're bearing with me. I'm a lot faster than I used to be with this. Still a little bit incapacitated, but not nearly as bad. Here we go. Okay, in this book, The Power of Silence, which is one of the ways of actually silence is one of the ways of retaining your energy and not giving it to people that are unworthy or by just talking too much. And kind of goes into that. What is that old saying? Never cast your pearls before swine, for they'll render your pearls asunder and do you in, something like that. Anyway, Power of Silence comes to that. But what's good about this, Castaneda had a teacher, Don Juan, the name down there you see, who was a Toltec shaman. Actually, as he called himself, a sorcerer, actually. And he actually really threw Castaneda through a lot of things that were really testing his perception and some concepts that are very, very advanced. And I think that as opposed to questioning the man's material, we should just be thankful that it was written, honestly, And I can talk later about what his fate and some things like that, and some things that seem to come amongst him and the Chocmoles, the women of his party. Anyway, in this book, okay, he talks about these Death Defiers that he encounters. Don Juan takes him out to this place in the Sonora Desert, a power spot, okay, and at night he starts seeing these warriors walking towards him out of the desert out there, and they're the ones that and Don Juan tells him those are the Death Defiers, and what they represent is a type of warrior or sorcerer from the past that had the ability to manipulate what's called the assemblage point on our luminous cocoon, okay, on our spirit body. They could manipulate the assemblage point to a point of where they could meld it with the earth matrix, okay? And which essentially what that is for you and I is turning the energy body after death to match the earth matrix. And Don Juan had said that these Earth Defiers would continue as long as the Earth Matrix continued. They'd always be here. And now how they did this and performed this was by burying themselves alive at the power spot, and then going into into what would be heightened awareness after burying themselves. But that's how they actually got their assemblage point to meld with the earth itself. Now, for further, let's talk about the assemblage point. What is that? And that's something I wanted to definitely go over. I've got a few different here. We'll start with just this one. All right. And what the assemblage point actually is. I've got like 5 really good diagrams of the assemblage point, but for some reason I'm just going to start with this one. All right. And I'll explain it. Then I'll show you the other pictures later. Once it's explained, for those of you who don't know what it is, it will just make it a little bit more simplistic, I believe. All right. Let's see. Here we go. This right here is the assemblage point. All right. Now I did a video a few years ago, and it's called Psychically Blind. Okay. And what I meant by that is that when seeing psychically and seeing spiritually, seeing by energy, we don't all see by color. You know, sometimes I thought that I wasn't able to really see because I wasn't seeing the super cool colors around people like you see in the books, like this book I've got here, Kundalini and the Chakras by Geneva Lewis Polson. Great book, but everything in it is very colorful, and the charts are so colorful. There are all these books you see. And what I was seeing around people was this white type of biofield, sometimes grayish, depending on their health, I think. And it was 2 general shapes, normally spherical or sometimes a little bit mushroom-like. But that's the shape of people, okay? And in the middle of that, what I would see is this black dot. And it would be about where and I didn't know really what it was, all right? I had my little, I was full of hypothesis when I was younger, but I thought it was probably, because it was on the physical body outside of, because luminous cocoon, the biofield is further out. It goes like 6 feet out or further, you know? So this black spot was about where the solar plexus was, maybe just a little up to the left, but it was always about right there when I see it on people. And so I didn't know exactly what it was. Now this diagram here has the assemblage point on the back of the luminous cocoon of the biofield, but really it's on the front, okay, at least where I've seen it. Now we're going to go to another thing about the, bear with me on this. This is important, and I'll try to explain it. Let's use this one. Let's use this one because it's got somewhat the spherical shape, which I think is important. All right. One day, Jessica, I'll get to do this as quick as you do it. You do this stuff instantly. I don't see how, but you always do. All right, here we go. Excuse me. Weather's changing. Got real cold, so I'm a little congested. This right here, okay, explains to a degree, luminous egg, the assemblage point there. All right. But the thing is this, if this were where the assemblage point were turned up, okay, we've got luminous filaments that are the universe. The creator operates, it's like these luminous filaments construct the entire universe in a way. And the luminous filaments flow through our luminous cocoon. They all pass through our luminous cocoon, our biofield. But at the assemblage point there is when they pass through that, the filaments that pass through that are the world that we assemble perceptually, okay, through those specific filaments. Sorry, I'm just going to move on because there's other pictures I have of this that are worthy of showing, okay? Bear with me, folks. I think it'll be worth it, I promise. All right. And they're just cool illustrations. I personally find that illustrations makes any presentation go just a little more enjoyable for the viewers. Yeah, here's a good one. Boom. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now on the the assemblage point is actually put it on the front of this. Okay, the front of this individual as opposed to where it is there. And I always saw it in around about the same area on people, all right, around the solar plexus, actually the diaphragm to be more exact, kind of just a little left of the diaphragm. Now, in that rim there, in that area, like that midsection area, that part of the luminous cocoon, that's what Don Juan had called the band of man. And he was saying anywhere the assemblage point moves on that along that band of man, even though it moves just a little bit, different universal filaments are flowing through the assemblage point, and we assemble another world. But if it's along the band of man, it's somewhat similar to this world here, perceptually. Okay, so when you start moving the assemblage point on other parts of the luminous cocoon, who knows what you're going to get as far as the worlds you assemble, according to the amount of universal filaments that are flowing through the assemblage point itself. So it's so that when I read that in that book, my mouth fell open because I was like, okay, what I'm seeing, it makes sense. I didn't know what it was. You know what I mean? I thought because I wasn't seeing pretty auras, I wasn't really seeing. So that's what I mean by psychic blind. And that's why I mean there's no right, there's no wrong. We all see differently. But seeing really is seeing the universe and perceiving through energy directly. That's what seeing means. And that's what we do. So, we've all got, in that way, think of how many of us, we have our assemblage point on the same fixation point so that we all perceive the same world. And I do believe that is an agreement. It's an agreement on the superconscious level. And that is what it is. Right? So let's go to the second, okay, and go back to the Death Defiers, and that other book of Carlos Castaneda I had shown, that was The Art of Dreaming. All right, and I've got one last assemblage point thing I'll show you just for cool stuff. And I don't this one is pretty accurate, but I mean it keeps saying like it's on the like it's actually on the human body, when actually it's on the biofield. At least what I've seen, it's not actually on the human body. I know it goes that close in, but it's not. Anyway, here I'll show you. Sorry, I'm talking instead of pulling this up. Hopefully, I'm not boring anybody and making enough sense. I'm going to tie all this together in a very interesting way. I'm sorry that the pictures are not as quick as they should be, but it's getting better, so just bear with me. Okay. There it is. Sorry. This is another assemblage point reference. All right. And most of these show them on the back, but they're on the front. Okay. I never saw that black spot from the back. I always saw them from the front when I was standing in front of people. All right. Anyway, going back. So this manipulation of the assemblage point, and going back to Carlos Castaneda and the Art of Dreaming book. Okay. In that book, he met a different type of Death Defier, which is not like the ones that were out, the buried warriors that were out in the desert out there. And, when it comes to that concept of the buried ones out in the desert, I had a client back in probably about 2004 or 5. He was from Sonora out there, maybe Catalina. And he had told me about, he said at night out in the desert out there, they would see like shadows moving around out there, what appear to be people. And he kept talking about one in particular that he called La Blanca. And he said the woman in white. And he said that we're all told never to go out there at night. Do not go out there into the desert, especially when you see those shapes out there. And La Blanca was something. And when I started looking into that more, La Blanca takes us into the lady in white that's seen in so many paranormal encounters with cryptids. If you start looking into any Sasquatch encounters, you'll find sometimes there's a woman in white seen near them. So I got very interested in that. But I think that another form of this Death Defier that was somebody that buried themselves. So that's just another aspect of that. Anyway, sorry folks. Going back to the Art of Dreaming book. All right. In that book, Castaneda describes another type of Death Defier that he was introduced to by Don Juan. And he said that there was an agreement with this, Don Juan called himself a Nahual. And they said Castaneda was technically one too, although he couldn't seem to master it. And he had his perception was still very European, Western base, and they laughed at him a lot because of that. But anyway, he said that his lineage had the novel of the leader of their group had to meet with the Death Defier, and there was an exchange of energy. It was an agreement that was made from like the first novel that started their lineage with this Death Defier. Now, when Castaneda meets the Death Defier the first time, or at least get a sight of him, okay, it was like in this church or something like that. And this Death Defier, wherever it was, he was an older Indian male with like long gray hair or something like that. And Castaneda was like scared of him or something, like intimidated, I guess. Then the next time Don Juan takes him like back to this church, so you're going to encounter the Death Defier again. And Castaneda's sitting there during the service and looking around. He don't see this old man, you know. But during one time, this rather attractive woman that's just somewhat dashing with these weird eyes keeps catching his eye, like sitting in front of him in the corner in the next pew over there. And this woman just keeps catching his attention, you know. And it kind of feels weird and stuff. And when they get done later on, Castaneda's all, man, I never get to see the Death Defier. He never came to that church because Don Juan said we always meet the Death Defier at this church. It's really old. And Don Juan's looking at him and said, you know, actually, you did see the Death Defier, and I think that he likes you. And he's like, what? The Death Defier was that woman. And Castaneda was just blown away. Okay. And I say this in a way, and then that's when Don Juan starts telling the Death Defier has the ability to move the assemblage point where it changes the physical body into the other sex. So this isn't like we're talking, this is something totally different in terms of being able to tell change actually like that. And you know, the same type of way that Don Juan had, I talked about this on Jessica's show probably a few weeks ago. Don Juan had come into a room and there were like several of the apprentices in there, including Castaneda. And then he leaves. And when he leaves, like Castaneda said, he had on this really, really, like, it was like some type of a Horatio Hornblower type of an outfit, like a red coat or blue coat, something like a sailor deal. And another cat said, he had on two-piece suit. Other person said, no, he had on feathers, you know, just so he looked different to everybody that walked in there, perceived someone different. And I think Jessica had said when they're at one of those places, Montauk or something, they saw some cop that everybody perceived to be different. See, that's somebody, and it's real interesting because I swore when she said somebody saw him as a long-haired Indian, I found that interesting. He seemed to sound like he favored Don Juan. Anyway, so this Death Defier, that's one of the abilities that it had too, all right? And there was an exchange of energy between the novel from that lineage and the Death Defier that allowed the Death Defier to renew itself. So that some type of a prana, life energy, loose, whatever exchange that was going on, but it was an agreement. I remember Don Juan saying, you know, he said, you're going to be right, because Castaneda was kind of scared of the Death Defier. And when Castaneda told him, he said, I think that actually he likes you. That's why he appeared like that. And then Don Juan's looking at him and said, yeah, he said, you guys could like each other anyway. And Don Juan said, I don't like the Death Defier. He said, I don't like his energy, and I didn't like the agreement or nothing, but I had to go through with it. So I think that's an interesting way to look at that, but that's a different type of Death Defier that has the ability to manipulate that assemblage point to a different place on the luminous cocoon to escape the death process. So I think that that's really noteworthy. And in the book, The Art of Dreaming, Castaneda started calling the Death Defier the Tenant. So if you look at those books, you check out the Tenant. Now, I don't want to pull this up because I didn't put it on my little slide thing, but there's another book by the ladies that were with Castaneda. Florinda Donner is one. Tasha Ablar is another one. Another lady named Marilyn Tanashindi, who was not down with Castaneda, okay? But they wrote these books, and I believe it's Florinda Donner wrote a book called Being in Dreaming. And during that, she talks about going to this land, this ranch where Don Juan was, and he taught them all different. He taught the women different, but there was a caretaker there. And this caretaker, the way she describes him, to me, almost sounded like it was the Death Defier, the Tenant. under a different type of a guise. You're dealing with these sorcerers, unquote. That some of them were capable of great trickery, and you know that, especially if you can move your manipulation, move your assemblage point like that. All right, so again, that's good. Food for thought, definitely. And when sleeping, our assemblage point moves much more fluid along the band of man, and maybe outside of it. I don't know, but that's something that happens when we sleep. That it's much more fluid in movement in that way, and it doesn't take much for something to jolt you and move your assemblage point a little bit. Don Juan used to do something to Castaneda where he slap him in the middle of the back. And when he slapped in the middle of the back, Castaneda said like he's pushing him into sickness almost. He'd be all dizzy and going all around and stuff. And what he was doing was pushing his assemblage point, actually. And that takes us into something like doing that and modifying that into something like what we've talked about before, the Shakti Pat that the gurus used on the swamis used on some of some of the apprentices. They would do that whole deal hoping they get the Shakti Pat, which was a touch from the guru that actually released the Kundalini and caused the chakras to turn and release and get like enlightenment. That's the Shakti Pat. But when Don Juan would do that slap on Castaneda, I felt that was somewhat similar. One of the cooler books, and that one may have been Tales of Power, which is a really good one. They were walking into about to go into this market, and Don Juan was just behind him. And he's about to walk in the door, and he slapped him in the back. And he describes almost falling into this store, and everything's going and swirling, and he's getting kind of sick and stuff, and he's seeing some weird people, and he's checking all this stuff out, and it's just bizarre. And then Don Juan grabs him. They go sit down on the bench, and he says he's just all out of it. And Don Juan said, "Yeah, you look like right now. I look like just a weird old Indian, and you look like a drunk." He said, "I pushed you into the left side of awareness, into heightened awareness, and you went too far in, and I had to go in there and get you." So when you start dealing with perception and stuff like that, it's very, very fascinating. And I will bring this up again since we're on this topic. All right, this is my channel. I guess I get weird. Doesn't matter. When dealing with Sasquatch, and especially the ones that are quote unquote the medicine men or the shamans or whatever that have this ability, these paranormal abilities, they have a lot of these abilities described that Don Juan had and that the Toltecs had as masters of perception, masters of consciousness. And for us to always be the great deception, maybe thinking Sasquatch is just some type of ape, when the truth is there's some sort of a tribe, human hybrid tribe that has mastered perception like that. They've been around a long time. And that's what I've talked about, things like the Sasquatch that are falling asleep in people's barns. What's up with that? They're crashing out. When you start really looking at the Castaneda information, all the techniques that Don Juan was giving him were techniques to actually be able to transfer his full cognitive awareness into the dream body, as they called it, the double. Okay, and then the double is able to be manifested even here in the third dimension with your full cognitive abilities in it. So a lot of times these cats would, like Don Juan and Don Hanero, were coming up and teaching Castaneda, but they're in their dream bodies, in their energy body. And Don Juan told him one day, he said, "Man, it's interesting. He's so fascinating." He said, "You've got an energy configuration of a novel." He's telling Castaneda, so all the other people, all the other warriors, they all think you can see. And he started laughing. He said, "They don't really know you." He said, "I know you, and I know you can't see." And it's bewildering. He said, "If you could really see, you would see half the time that when Don Hanero, which was his a fellow warrior of Don Juan, but he was also a teacher at Castaneda." Oh, whoa. I appear to be back. Can you all still hear me? Wow, that's weird. Internet's messing up here. Oh, okay, I'm back. Oh wow. Okay. Oh geez. Sorry. Where was I? Maybe the information's getting a little heavy there. Anyway, Don Juan had told Castaneda, if you could really see, you would see that Don Genaro was actually a ball of energy in front of you. And this was a time that he started jumping around this waterfall and doing things that were defying gravity. And it made Castaneda lose control of his bowels and stuff. He couldn't even stand seeing it. But he's saying you would be able to see that that was Genaro was in his energy form doing that. He said, but you can't see. So it takes us into cognitive bias and also cognitive dissonance. So when they're talking, he's still seeing Genaro as a person when really it wasn't. That's not what it was. So, it says a lot how much beings of perception can just do that to us because we already have cognitive bias and cognitive dissonance. So it's not that hard. All right. Um, okay. See, okay, now I go back to my deal here. This is where I start getting behind. Okay, yeah, that's most of it. That describes the tenet, that describes the buried warriors, and it also describes the warrior, the prana gurus, and the ones that are using kriya and pranayama. Oh, sorry, back to Sasquatch. I got ripped. That's where I get interrupted. Um, the times when I got very interested in hearing things that people say they walk up on Sasquatch in their sleep. And first of all, when you have a species of that nature that are so wonderful, perfect at being invisible and not even real to us and hiding from us, why on the earth would they go up in somebody's barn and just crash out? You know what I mean? And at that point there, are they shifting their full body, their full awareness into the dream body? And we're perceiving them in that way. And that's why some of them are impervious to bullets and disappearing and reappearing. These are characteristics that are common with the dream body, the energy body, that doesn't conform to the same physical laws that this body does. And I'm seeing a lot of that as Sasquatch. And I think that's where you start getting their paranormal abilities and stuff like that coming in. And no, I don't think all of them can do it. Not all the species can do it, but certain ones can, certainly ones that are quote unquote the shamans or the sorcerers or whatever. You got to think about the kind of trade that went in the past when Sasquatch did trade with people, did interact with people, different cultures. That's talked about. That would have been a whole different platform of perception for this planet. Not just because we're interacting with them, but because it'd be a different level. And that's where I think maybe we're transitioning back to now. I hope anyway. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of this. Actually, my goodness. So I'm gonna. This is the little part two. All right, is now we've talked about the death defying and all that, and we know that we've dealt with the subject of losing our soul life memories at death. All right, and that's come from the way we can look at that two ways. One is the way that the way that Don Juan described it to Castaneda, which I've talked about before, but I'm gonna hit on it again. All right, which is that the universe itself is shaped like an eagle. And that when we die, we go into the beak of the eagle, and it's the beak of the eagle that devours our soul life memories, all right, for that life. And then that's when, yeah, so that's something that they had a deal for dealing with that. Now, also, because they said that it's like the beak of the eagle, like I said, devours the soul life memories. Now, when dealing with this book from Ray Hernandez and Free and CCRI, the Mind of God, there. If you see, oh, sorry, it's upside down. No, no, it wasn't. Sorry, Mind of God, there. And what they're saying, and it takes it into philosophy to a degree too, with some other things, but that when we actually go to the mind of God at death, that's what takes our soul life memories, our life memories, wipes us clean, and we send back to our next incarnation. All right. Now, when dealing with this, how to stop that from happening? Because I don't want to lose my soul life memories. I worked too hard this time, and reasons that happened we could go into over and over. Is it purposely? Is it something we agree to? Is it automatically done? Is it both? Or is it the fact that we are immortal souls and we know the end of every outcome and every quantum possibility, that part of us that's still in perfection with the creator? and we have nothing left but to wipe ourselves clean so we can learn again and experience ourselves again. Very big chance of that too. So that's another. I'm not here to debate neither that nor they. Okay, but anyway, the point is when dealing with this process of losing life memories, and that could take us into these fools saying, "Don't go into the light, don't go to the light because such and such said so." But without any, they don't offer you any suggestions of real truth of how to get out of any of that and how not to do that and what happens to you if you don't. You don't want to be, and look, fellas, sorry, hanging out with my cousins too much. Look, everybody, and I'm telling you something honestly, all right? I've dealt now with a number of earthbound spirits that told me they did not cross over. And part of that is just going into the light. It's not that it's the all, but it's part of, actually sound is light and light is about everything in that way. And from the darkness comes the light, from the melancholy comes the light. So when dealing that, it's part of just the transition. It's a medium of transition, a medium of communication. That's what it really is, as opposed to some big trap. All right. But these earthbounds told me, I've had several of them. Well, I didn't go in because I was told it was a trick, so I didn't go in there. But then it went away and I was just kind of trapped. I can move around, but it's dark here, and I see light on other people, and I think maybe it's a chance I can reincarnate. So I join with them. But then it's not that, but I can live through them, and they start influencing the person. Normally the stuff that, caused them to die, or like they stop them from transitioning. I'm sorry, which could be addiction, property, people, whatever it might be. But that starts ruining people's lives. That's why I say that's so serious. So somebody telling that information to other people and saying that publicly when they've not died, they've not experienced it. Okay, I had somebody try to come on and say, "Oh, I would." The last time, I didn't catch the comment last time. "Oh, I went right before source and it sent me back." First of all, I question: is that a real story? It doesn't feel real. And I can detect energy when I read stuff. It felt like a lie to me. All right. And secondly, when you went before source, how was this a suicide? And what did source look like? I'm quite interested. Stuff like that. And the big truth is that it's a problem, just like dissolving negative identities, that you get in front of yourself, which is your super consciousness, your divine overself, whatever y'all want to call it, a thought adjuster, okay, like the Rancher book does, whatever. But you get in front of yourself, that part of you that is still in perfection with the creator, and you go through this panoramic life review, you judge yourself. So if you didn't do what you agreed to do with yourself, you wind up coming back. This is a school. Believe me, I used to think that this was a prison planet too, trapped with a planet full of lost souls. I always thought that, based on just the stuff I see down here, the great trauma and everything. But it really is a school of hard knocks. I'm telling you that. So anyone that comes back and affects the way that person was saying, that's you doing that, telling yourself. But you know what? It's hard. It's easier to blame God or blame whatever, because it puts too much responsibility on ourselves. That's a big problem. I do this work dissolving negative identities, and that work is real. And it's a real core of who we are. And it shows that we're energy beings that can dissolve the negative identities, but we're positive energy beings. Our spirit is positive energy beings. That means we can be omnipotent and omnipresent. Our growth potential is unlimited. We just don't think that, because what we really are, our feelings, are invisible. It's energy. And that's the whole thing with the negative identity. So I work with some people, we'll get rid of some of them, and then they don't come back. They don't come back to the second session to complete it or anything, because they can't deal. They don't want to get rid of them. And secondly is that they can't deal with the responsibility. We create the negative identities through the trauma we endure, which walks around down here like a member of the population. But once so we've got these four parts. I've said this before, and I won't go into this too much more. The body, the mind, spirit, and the negative self. That takes us really into psychology a lot. Look up the negative self and how much of our energy goes into that. The negative thoughts we have that are our own. Then you got others that come that aren't ours, but you've got the negative thoughts. self-efficacy problems, self-confidence problems, self-esteem problems. That all comes from the negative self, not believing in oneself. All negative self things, seeing only bad things. Those are negative self MO characteristics. Now, when we endure, and so a lot of energy is already there. Okay. Now we endure trauma and it fractures the negative self into these negative identities that react to things that that help make them. But you don't know it because the subconscious comes and grabs the negative identity and hides it back in there. It's running in the background. Okay. But when you dissolve one of the negative identities we create, so that person will see, my gosh, I did that. I created that. That's kind of my doing. And it puts a lot of responsibility on us. Just like you realize, well, gosh, I got sent back because I sent myself back. And I would ask the person, are you in a habit of lying to yourself? Do you lie to yourself? It might be part of what's going on there. And I can only base that, y'all, on the work I've done. Okay. Doesn't mean it's obsolete. Like I said earlier, there's no right or wrong, but sometimes the data and the experience speaks for itself. And I'm always looking for these soul traps. I'm looking for these situations like that. Not encountered it. And it says something. We're much more powerful than we think that we're ever left to believe when we join with our other self, And it's a shame that someone has to be in almost delta high theta hypnosis to really connect with their superconscious, that we're just not like that all the time. Anyway, going back to these things that clause. So the clauses in how to actually escape the loss of soul life memories. Don't you? Almost done, and I'll go to chat and we'll get out of here. But anyway, one way that is emphasized by the Toltecs and Castaneda, I've talked about this before, it's called the recapitulation. Or I call it the recap because it's kind of a hard word. The recapitulation, the recap is, and what that is actually knowing that we leave our energy with everybody we've interacted with every situation we've been in. We leave energy there that disperses from who we are, our own luminous cocoon. All right. So the recapitulation is the process of using like pranayama breathing from left to right and reconstructing like a situation, an event of your life that is down to the very molecule of reconstruction. Every physical aspect, every energetic aspect, and then you start breathing and taking that energy back into your biofield, your luminous cocoon that was left there. Okay. And you start doing that with every situation of your life. It takes ages. It's a serious undertaking. But what happens? The ultimate, excuse me, the ultimate end result of this is the ability to actually when you go through the death process and you go through the beak of the eagle or the mind of God, whatever you want to call it, it actually takes the recap and leaves your soul life memories intact. Okay. And then at that point, you have the ability as an energy body to use your intent of will to shape and mold your energy field, your energy body, your dream into whatever it is that you want, or for the next container of consciousness through your own pure will. So that's the little clause that is offered from Castaneda's work in that, okay, and what they did, which is the recap. And I think that's very, very important because it's somewhat liberating too to sometimes free yourself from some of those situations. It's quite interesting. So, and now I want to take this and cross-reference this with something else. And I'm going to show a picture for that one, all right? And I'm going to be on Alexis Brooks's show this Tuesday. So I'll probably bring this concept up there and talk about some of this. She wants to talk about some afterlife things, and it should be interesting. Okay, so going to another quote unquote technique. All right. And I've talked about this before, although I was not able to show a picture like I can now. Okay. This is the work of Judy K. King and the ISIS thesis. And I think she's quite brilliant. I've said that before. All right. And what the ISIS thesis actually is awakening parts of our quote unquote junk DNA, which is actual viral, most of it, ancient viral. And it's accessing what's called the lambda phage, the phage lambda bacteria. Because you've got, viral, the junk DNA is viral and also bacterial, but it's activating something called the phage lambda, and the phage lambda has got a light component to it, and actually converts other cells into this life type of process. All right, and using light. So very interesting. And she was saying in the ISIS thesis that what the pharaohs were doing were actually trying to use the mummification to actually stop the quick deterioration of the physical body long enough for the lambda phage to take over and for them to keep soul life memories. And then at that point, having the ability, and when you look at more, excuse me, we look further into ISIS thesis, it says at the point of death that you actually turn from the light, okay, and actually use these these Egyptian postures to certain meridians in certain directions, and that's how you avoid losing the soul life memories. All right, and it's interesting. Like my friend that spoke a couple conferences with, Jason Quitt. He talks about the Egyptian postures quite a bit, and also something I'll throw in with that too is when looking at when looking especially at melanin dominant, you're looking at like braids, different types of braids and braid locks of hair. There's an enormous amount of personal energy can be gotten in that, and also spiritual connections through the sun as well. When you start dealing that's the whole thing can be looked up. I had there was a really wonderful lady. It was at the Melanin Dominant conferences I spoke at, both of those. Her name was Ada. Ada, gosh, can't remember her last name now. But lives in LA, but she's brilliant. She actually had a whole thing about how the locks and how the different pharaoh type of locks and different braid patterns, the energy configurations of like orgone and things that they generate. I think even MK Davis has done something about Patty having a braid, and he was saying certain things about it and how she was called the one that leads and all this stuff. That was the last couple of videos he had done. Anyway, concerning the ISIS thesis, that's one of these. Now, they say also that once you turn like to certain these postures, you'll hear sounds, and that you engage the sounds also. They're the sounds of the soul. I've heard somebody that I used to work with use that type of a talk, okay? They don't know the ISIS thesis, but they're using parts of it and giving people bad advice that will get them trapped, okay? And it's a shame because I'm gonna tell you folks something. I don't talk to that individual more. They said I'm the Dark Cabal with David Wilcox. Okay, never met that cat, but okay. That's all based on the fact of what I'm telling you now, that I believe in the light and going into the light. And this is a campaign, a war against the light. Okay, but I'm just telling you some theories, some different ways right here. The ISIS thesis, the recapitulation, that can actually use. Now, technically, after you've turned and with the ISIS thesis and use this technique, then that's the point when you can actually not, because they put it as in like leaving the, oh gosh, what is not the atmosphere, the thermos, God, going outside, just outside of the, oh gosh, not the Kuiper belt. Lord, sorry, I'm getting too excited. Anyway, it's going outside of the different realm of the earth, or just outside of the atmosphere, that you have to get outside of that. And then that's when you can actually shape your energy and mold your energy body. All right. But actually, what I can tell you is you can actually do that in the light when you actually join with. You know what I mean? And I could say that in terms of now that I recently, and I mentioned this, I recently had a individual who had probably about 12 earthbounds attached to him, and most of them were all family members that had attached to them. And by the time I had crossed the fourth one, they're seeing the first one or two that I crossed. They're already over there and they're looking different. Not just that they have the bodies made of that ether, orgo, and astral material. They also have some of the energy fields around them almost look like wings. Yeah, that's the energy fields, what that actually is, opposed to actual wings. I can say that from what I saw when I died. But anyway, this is just another way that I wanted to kind of mention, another way to kind of keep our soul life memories. This is another technique, something that we can try to mold our own energy field, our own body field. So think in terms of after passing and going through this, what would you want your next container of consciousness to be? You would want your energy body to shift into. You know, would it is it a mountain? Is it a star? Is it a planet? Is it a galaxy? We don't know what we're really capable of. And again, as energy beings, it's infinitesimal. So that's why I've been going through this a lot, because the work and things, but there are things, techniques for us to experiment with our consciousness. And how do we trigger our intent of will to mold our energy body? How do we do that? Okay, I'm going to tell you folks something. A big trick of it is using your imagination and creative visualization. The imagination, and that comes through images. Images is the imagination, and that's one of the ways we trigger the intent of will. And it's not emphasized nearly enough. Boom! I think that's everything I wanted to say. Gosh, it's only been like an hour. My God, this is a record. Sorry, I'm just going over my notes real quick to make sure I said everything. Yeah, that kind of starts taking us to the level when you look at Star Trek, looking at who they call super beings and how many of those they've encountered. One of them would be the Q continuum. Another would be the original. They had what's guy look like Liberace, Trelane. Yeah, Trelane was some type of a super being too. And gosh, there's been another. I have to say the Dowd, the one that destroyed an entire race by thoughts. I think that was a super being too. But when going to the Q continuum again, like the Q that wanted to kill itself in Voyager, they said they'd been everything there was to be in the cosmos. Everything. So there was nothing left to talk about. There was nothing left to explore. And in that way, they had like become stagnant. And I've compared that to the Bardo Thodol, how the Bardo Thodol talks about when some go through that second part of the death process and hit the love that they put out, actually blisses them out and puts them on a level of the Bardo that's high up, but they're blissed out. And something I'll say real quick for in this, and I'll go into chat, and that's what everybody's talking about. Can't believe I got done this quick. I'm just elated. No, at least done with my part anyway. I'll talk to everybody for a minute. But oh gosh, what was I saying before that? It's the energy body or something. Jeez, so sorry, y'all. I forgot. I lost it. I was going over here and just see what's going on. Let's see. Tamara, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here. Yes, imagination is important, definitely. I mean, it's not, if it seems like if we're not like artists or something, it's not emphasized enough, and it's not emphasized enough how actually the brain communicates with the spirit, with the soul through images. It uses images, and images is the beginning of imagination. So it's very important, and when you combine that with creative visualization, especially in protection techniques, that's imperative. You use your creative visualization, push these things off of you, get them away from you. The same as when you've been in a room before when somebody walks in that doesn't like somebody else, but they've got a really dominant presence, and that person they don't like just winds up getting up and leaves without the person ever looking at them or saying anything. That's that intent of will. You amplify that 1,000 times to get these darks off you, to get these negatives off you. Okay. So that's one thing I want to bring up. But when it comes to actually how to mold and shape the energy body perceptually, if we don't lose our life memories, that's another huge way. It's the intent of will on what you want to be, you know? And I tell you, I think it's infinitesimal what we can be. And I'd say that based on, I've just dealt with some of these regressions and not what you would think. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. Sorry. I had this session and it was I'll probably talk about this on Alexa's show on Tuesday too, but it was these beings in the room, okay? They weren't attached to the client, but they're in the room, and it was 4 of them, and they said they were basically from like the 5th density or the 5th mansion world, as this book would call it. All right, we'll call it. And they described how they were there on like a scouting mission for information, and it was about love, because love permeated all dimensions, all time, all universes. It went through everything. Then they started telling me they had been observing my work. Always trips me out when you hear that from things on the other side. They said, we watched you too. And you talked about the soul. And we want to know, what is the difference between the soul and the spirit? And they started saying where they were at the level they were at, this 5th mansion world, they was good. Said they was good. Very, very much, with the creator, all these things, but they were just great. And that they weren't convinced that that energy body, that container they had, that spirit body, is not the soul and not the same thing. They said, but the thing is, love goes through everything and goes through so that there might be more. And, all dimensions, all time, all universes, love goes through everything. So there might be something more than just our spirit body. And, when hearing there's one particularly talking to me, to this person. And to hear them say that really reminded me of that part of the Bardo Todo I read. That's like it compares like this part of the higher Bardo, these gods on this beach with everything being brought to them they could ever want. So where does their aspiration ever go forward to go more to the creator? They just kind of hang on the beach forever and they become stagnant. And that's kind of what I was hearing from these beings on the 5th mansion world say. I mean, that's fascinating, don't you think? If you look at Yutiswar's book, Sri, S-R-I, Y-U-T-S-E-W-A-R, Yutiswar. He was Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher. All right, he came back, and Paramahansa talks about that in Autobiography of a Yogi. I think I'm getting tired. Anyway, he says how Yutiswara came back to him after he had died, like however long it was, and he had like this shimmering silver type of something light around him. And he told him, he said, at the level I'm on spiritually, I manifested on this level, the Bardo, just kind of high up, but there's more. And he was just saying some of the things, how it was like, and how, according to how much you've achieved in awareness, you actually manifest over there. In this book, it talks about, 7 mansion worlds that are almost architectural spheres. And it kind of traced back to, like, I believe it's the Christian Bible, where Yeshua says that his father's house has many mansions. It's the mansions world. That's what they're talking about. When looking at people who've had near-death experiences different than my own, not Whitley Strieber, the guy who talked to me, Daniel Brinkley, he talks about seeing those crystal palaces. My brother has seen crystal palaces on one of his OBEs. I've heard others talk about that too. And that book describes the first mansion world as this crystal palace, a huge one you land on, and others being there. I think that's very interesting. Things like that we need to take into account. How do we perceive things after we're out of this body too? After we're not having the brain, after we're not having the heart, these other things, how do we just perceive this pure energy beings? That's important, I think, and maybe part of the gift here, if we can master some of this, is taking that with us and incorporating that into our soul matrix, you know, and in an incarnation where we do access that on a different place. Anyway, sorry, I'll go up a little bit here. Imagination is important. Thanks, Tamara. Darcy, what's up? Thank you for coming. Amy, thank you for coming. We were Dr. Pepper eyes. I don't know what that would mean. Sorry, I went into the conversation there. Dr. Pepper eyes. Every time I think of Dr. Pepper, I'm sorry, I can't help but think about the damn American Werewolf in London. I can't help it because he was the Dr. Pepper guy. He was always dancing around. He's a pepper, she's a pepper, doctor. And the next thing I know, man, that cat was walking on the moors. He got jacked. And that was the most, even today, that transformation somewhat holds up. I think it's better than the one from The Howling. I know The Howling, look, I like that actor because it's Robert Picardo who played the doctor on Star Trek Voyager. That was a dude in The Howling. Okay, but anyway, I thought that was pretty good, but it wasn't like the one that David Naughton, the American Werewolf in London. That one was a trip. And honestly, although I see now they was trying to cut money, save budget, but the fact that that wolf was on all fours and the size that it was, that was a bit terrifying. You know, like the cat that was running in the subway. Good God, he started trying to run, but he couldn't get away and he fell on the steps or whatever. And all you see is that wolf kind of come out, just the front two paws and the head. Now I know why, because John Landis said they had that thing a wheelbarrow thing. They were trying hard to keep that thing to anyway, you know. But nonetheless, it really conveyed that Lycan type of thing going on. I think more than almost any movie I've seen then. That movie made Wolfman look silly. You know, Wolfman, I always liked the Wolfman because Lon Chaney Jr., he turned the wolf, he's walking on his tiptoes like there were paws. Oh, man. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. I don't want to get all geeky on movies references like I tend to do. Sorry, I'll go up a little on chat here so I can see what's going on, folks. I'm sorry. We'll give it a few and then we'll get it. Source wants data, wants experience. Source sent you back. Remember the show Quantum Leap? You know, I could never get too into that. A little bit, and it's interesting because I wind up liking him as Captain Archer. Scott Bakula, he was pretty good as Captain Archer, and I think that show didn't get enough deal. Do any of y'all remember a TV show called The Voyagers? The Voyagers was the cat, he had this stopwatch, the kid and this dude, and it would go to these different times and try to interact with people and do different things. It was called The Voyagers. And you know, the actor that was the dude that played this Caucasian dude with like these blue eyes, his name was John Eric Hexum was his name. And he had another show that was called Cover Up, like came on just after Magnum PI on Channel 12. I remember it. And he's supposed to be like a Magnum PI type guy. And he had a song, I Gotta Have a Hero, like that. He's jumping around and stuff. And on the set of that show, he had one of the prop guns and was loaded with blanks. And he was like playing Russian roulette with it or something and one went through his head. And he got rushed to the hospital and he wound up dying. And he, unalived. And he did a lot of like organ harvesting. So he saved a bunch of people's lives, apparently. But you know, I've heard interesting things about him, that set where that kind of happened, that people still see him on that set. I've also heard people see him on airplanes sometimes too. Food for thought, you know what I mean? Did you just do a 20 and back? Oh, I wasn't gone for 20 minutes? Was I when the internet went down? Hope I wasn't gone 20 minutes. Jessica said that. Okay, now I'm stressing out now. Oh no, please not over those deals. I was up here talking to nothing. Oh gosh, I may never recover from such a trauma like that again. Oh, last time was 2 hours. Though. I was talking 2 hours to myself. Oh, Mark Zemer, what's up, man? Barry, I received 2 books on spirit therapy, the Unquiet book this week. Thanks for the suggestion. No problem. Um, really good book. He's talking about here from Dr. Edith Fiora. And this is something that got recommended to me in about, was it 2004? This guy, John, told me to read. Great work she did. And she was really a psychologist that went all into dealing with the unquiet dead. You know, she wrote another book too, John. This one right here, Encounters. And it's really good because she started encountering in people that had extraterrestrial encounters and abductions just as much as she started encountering the dead. And you know, it's interesting because it gives validity to those that have negative encounters. A lot of them she worked with, they had negative encounters. You know, that's why I say, I no means do I think that all people having ET contact is positive, but I do think the majority of it is, and we just don't hear about it. There's definitely negative stuff going on. I mean, negative beings run around down here trying to bleed in through here. Some of them I think are from our own timeline. That's why they're dealing with us. Some of these grays, these things from the future, the ones that are mutilating the cows. You know, that show that Jessica and I did over the a few weeks over the Amico alien. That, you know, that if you look at those pictures, they're a little bit discerning. You know what I mean? And when you start looking at the eyes, how William Cooper had said that those eyes to him look like cow eyes, bovine eyes. And, you know, a lot of times in mutilations, they're actually taking the eyes from those cows. Mutilate. That's one of the things that gets mutilated right along with the genitals and stuff. So, you know, anyway. Boy, there's a few people in here. Thank you all for coming. NSS, thank you for coming. Oh, she not be able to. Uh-oh. Oh, there you go. So I'm trying to get this thing to where I can. Well, for some reason, this thing is not allowing me to. There it is. I was trying to go to the top of the chat and it's not letting me do it. So I'm back on. I'm at 320 right now. I'll just go down from there. Um, Guilt will hold you back. Guilt from what? Guilt how? It's an interesting statement. But if you mean earthbound wise, oh, it will. That's what you're referring to. Guilt will hold you back. You meant earthbound? Yeah, it was. Sorry, I can't go back up now. I saw that comment. I don't know who made it, but I might have been Urso, I think. But yeah, it sure will. I've seen that a lot. Or guilt of even just leaving somebody if their life isn't right. How can I leave this person I love when their life isn't right? I got to make sure that they get right. That is strong, and that will keep people here. I agree with that 100%. Fear will hold you back. Fear will definitely hold you back out of the light. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. You know, like for example, I heard Earthbound to tell me, "Well, I didn't go into light because I've killed someone, I've hurt people, and I think I'm gonna go in there and burn." And that very concept of hell is played on by these other beings that come around in people's bodies. And they tell people, you know, I've had some Earthbounds tell me, "Well, I was told that if when you came, if I worked with you, I was going to be punished. How? Well, I'm going to be sent down to the pit, and it's going to be real painful." You know, and things like that. Who told you that? Well, the others that were in this body that left before you came, but they said they'll be back. when the person is doing the protection. I've heard stuff like that. And it's disconcerting, because we're just jam packed with inorganic beings around us, jam packed with unbound spirits, jam packed with some type of demonic faction that walks around down here, astral. I mean, it's a little disconcerting. It could be even depressive, but we're gonna get past that. Bigfoot Dwarf, what's up, man? Thanks for coming. My NDE term, it was void, was blacker than black, but I could see all the colors along with the music appeared at the end, and the brightest white golden light. So you saw the light, and it's often that type of a color, a golden or a yellow or a white, but it comes with it. And he's saying it's cool because when dealing with that, so you saw the blackness. So you've got people saying go into the blackness that you saw because that's melanin. That's not correct. That is a bad advice. Okay. And what happens when, even when you read Daniel Brinkley's Saved by the Light, he talks about how when he first died that first time, he was floating in this abyss and he didn't have enough spiritual knowledge to go further. He felt like enough light or enough energy with him to go further. He's just floating out there. And he was really afraid he was going to be floating out there forever. And then that's when these beings, you can see them coming from the distance, these light beings, they're like a type of crystalline light beings, came and took him to that mansion world where there those crystal palaces. So that's something there, so I'm glad thanks for saying that, Tamara. I appreciate that. That's good information. And I'm saying that's one thing that actually sound comes from light. So there's a connection there. I'm really glad you said that. Next up. Nothing to fear if you know what and who you are. I agree with that. Sweet Pea, 1776. Thanks for coming. I was in darkness with other and couldn't see. Couldn't see when I had NDE. Yeah. Well, it's at that point. It's at that point, you wait. You may not have seen it first, but it will come. You know what I mean? And that's part of just what happens. I mean, there's when you first go through the first NDE, you go through a shock. That depends on how much did you die. You know what I mean? Like, were you like me or would you? I don't know, but there's a certain point where there's a shock, and you got to get through the shock just a little bit, and then the light will come. I can only speak from, I've heard others say that before. Because the people say, the earthbound say, well, then I realized my friends are resuscitating me, or that was me that was laying there. And I couldn't believe it, and I felt like I was cheated, yada yada yada, and they start tripping. I said, but then the light came, but it may be like a little bit of time. Even if you look at like the movie Ghost, in between the time that the dude shot him and he chased after him, then he ran back to Demi, you had a time there, and he's looking at himself and seeing her holding him, telling him to breathe, and he starts having to kind of remembering the stuff that happened the last day or two. That's the type of panoramic life review. Then the light came. And that's when he started looking and go, no, he's looking at his body. No, no, no. He started running back towards his body. And being someone that's died myself, I can say that I definitely saw light. More than that, I saw these, I call them light beings, I call them super nanofim. I saw them, and they were absolutely regal. And when I say that, I've never felt that type of love coming from a being like that, pure creator love. They were very bright, and I know they were tapering it down, or I think it would have burned up my body. I don't think I would be capable of withstanding that intensity of straight love frequency, but by the same token, it's that frequency they used to heal me, I know. And I think they used the people that came to see me and actually did take a second to pray for me to help me heal to what you see now. So that's more food for thought. And like I said, everybody, there's no wrongs or rights because we all got different experiences, It's trying to get down to what's the core part of it that we can all use for help and use as information to gain knowledge from. Cryptoville. Seems to be a lot of lacking responsibility thing going on these days. Definitely. We have so much negative and people doing dirt. Yeah, that's why I thought this was a prison planet, Cryptoville, because you see so much of that down here, and I'm hoping maybe that's what's changing at least a little bit when it's not just totally skewed to the negative. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing when MK went over that braid, he talked to Native Americans about the braid. I think he should talk to some black people about the braid, and especially going back and Kemetically, what did it mean, Egyptian braids like that? It's not just only Native American. We have other cultures too that I think don't get acknowledged quite enough when it comes culturally in America, but it is what it is. Jonah side, David Wilcock blocked me because I said he looked cooler with a mustache and be more believable. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of that cat. He's done nothing to me. I don't know him. But man, just to me, it was kind of his method of presentation is a little irritating to me. And then also the whole thing that he was Edgar Casey. And if you really followed that, that Edgar Casey's family was reaching out saying they were pretty upset. And he was trying to carry that on because they have a couple of facial deals or whatever. And you see, he don't say that anymore, does he? Yeah, I mean that. Sometimes you've got to think we say these things about people's families that have lost loved ones and how they might feel about that type of stuff. And that cat couldn't produce the information to say he was really Edgar Casey. Then I watched that whole thing going on with him and that whistleblower, and then the whole thing with the people that were all upset about the anti-gravity workshop he did. People paid all that money and they got no real blueprints to make an anti-gravity hyperdrive or anything like that. I heard people were mad about that. I heard about that a few times. So stuff like that, I just tend to stay clear of. You know what I mean? I prefer to hear. I was gonna say it to mess with y'all. David Icky. No, I'm just kidding. David Icke's work is a little bit better, I think. Oh man. The firmament, Mike Jones. Firmament is why people no longer live as long and why cancer is so much cooking people. That's that firmament being gone. And I do believe that to past life memory, it was a war that brought that firmament down. I believe it was hot fragments from an energy weapon that burned up our atmosphere. The fragments of the moon, the other moon, they tried to break and have come rain down on a certain area of the world. And what happened was the heated fragments caused that, ruined the firmament. Yeah. And I think also some of the energy weapons that were being used that were ones that were making energy into matter into energy. And I've compared that before to like the nothing on the never ending story. That was the major nemesis, was the nothing. And what was it doing? It was dissolving Fantasia into nothing, into energy. And that's about what you had with some of once those black pyramids had got a hold of that initiation technology, and then the selfish will and the selfish energy that they put into them caused those instruments to go awry. Elizabeth Hayes talks about that. There's other books too, but Elizabeth Hayes, I got one of her books in here. Yeah, here it is. Real good one. She talks about the deluge that happened. And she's coming from she would have been probably what, sixth dynasty maybe, or fourth dynasty she's talking about. But this is a really good book. Now, this is one that got laid on me, and oh gosh, man. I might have been a freshman in high school. If that, not even then. Actually, that might have been a year before that. But anyway, it was a good book. The dude that laid it on me, he said, man, I know you have memories that don't fit with what you learned in school, don't you? Stuff that you can't fit anywhere. He knew a few things. He said, you need to read this book, man. I think you'll vibe on it. The brother was right. He looked at me, he goes, man, I've been waiting a long time to talk to you. I've watched you since you were really young, man. You're one of them. I was like, what do you mean one of them, man? Hell are you talking about, man? And he laid that book on me. He laid the Uranta book on me also. That was 1988. Yeah. So anyway, sorry. This ain't about me going back and my sitting up here like the one did the past, It's hard to forget though. Sometimes you get certain people step into your life when they should. Darcy, what's up? Oh, that's cool. Amy at 341. You have to believe in something so much that it makes anything else impossible. Everything starts with a single belief. You should put that on like a card or something. That's definitely very true. Very true. And it says a lot about really what we are, how much our intent of will and everything goes forward and is really where it's at. So, oh, whoa. Sorry, I went way too far down. Oh, no. Oh, I just screwed that up. Oh, Leanne or Lorianne, thanks for coming. Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. It looks cool because I'm on the internet, so it looks like I'm real smart. But in person, you might be disappointed. You ask me a question, I look up to you, like we used to do back in the '80s. You ask me a question, I probably go "doi," and I'll be able to answer the question. He'd be like, "Man, that brother sucks, man. He's better on YouTube." Tamara, why are we never mind wiped after NDE? You know, I don't know. I can tell you this though. Something that was disturbing for me. I was unconscious after my accident for about 2 weeks, and then after I was quote unquote conscious, I couldn't remember who I was for about 2 weeks after that, and maybe almost a month actually. And it was very disturbing. So in some ways, it almost felt like a mind wipe. You know what I mean? But the truth is, I was also trying to understand, like, for example, how much of it, because I was trying to understand my near death experience, how much of it could I explain with psychologists? How much of it is reality is real to the perceiver? Like, for example, was I seeing those angelics, those super nanofem, because it was the last oxygen in my brain processing through yada, 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 all these different things. You know what I mean? But I could say is reality is real to the perceiver. Had I not come back here, I would have been still there dealing with all that. When I saw my loved ones, that my uncle that had just died, we just buried him like a few days before the accident. And I saw him. He was able to communicate with me very, very clearly, as were my grandmother, who'd been dead, 30 some years, is standing back there and she's looking, not really saying anything. And I think it's because I wasn't fully crossed and my uncle was, but recently. And he could kind of come and talk a little bit more in that corridor I was in, kind of. I think there's a corridor we can kind of meet at before we fully transition. Anyway, that's my answer to that. But I can't fully answer that while we don't get mind wiped after NDE. But I worried that I was. But then after looking that, well, actually, it's somebody that was suffering from 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries. You can't remember everything during the point of trauma, or when you're in the coma itself. And I can remember several things, seeing different places and different people in some things, but it's just a fraction of the time that I was technically unconscious. And the same went for my experiences. That's why when I actually recovered from my accident, I finally went and got my own regression done. Because I was like, the only time I'm missing in my life is when I got really knocked around real good and when I had those encounters with non-human intelligences. So I went and finally got my own regression. And it's a trip because by that time I'd already long been a hypnotist for years, but I told nobody. When I came forward, I went to all those conferences, never told anybody I was a hypnotist. I didn't want anybody to know because I didn't go to one of the great schools for it. I taught myself and I went to all these different workshops and read a bunch about it and then started working with it. You know what I mean? The last workshop I did was really good, like 2011. And I'm not QHHT. I don't do that. No disrespect to those people, but that's not the system I use. Okay. It's totally different. The Earthbound Spirit system I use is my own. I made it. Okay. Designed it on other things I've seen some other people doing. and also based on what I learned in cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think is good. And cognitive behavioral therapy works not just on us, man, it works on our earthbound double good. Think about it, especially if you've been wanting to talk to somebody. And sometimes the worst thing you could come in and just come in like a Max von Sydow, oh, leave, all that stuff, demon. And what if it's not a demon? Sometimes it's just people didn't cross over and they're really confused and they don't need to be treated like that. And how did you feel when somebody come up on you like that? You get mad. You start tripping. So that's just a little bit of common courtesy that goes a little ways when you realize I'm talking about the earthbound spirit level, not the demonic. I'm talking about earthbound. Okay, there's a difference there. But you do get those that were so horrible in life that when they die, they come in, they turn to something worse. But in that case, getting rid of them, not trying to cross them, not doing all that, just bye. Anyway, food for thought on that. Oh, well, there's still people chatting. I thought I was at the end. I'm not. And again, I appreciate you all being here and just chopping it up. It's really about chopping it up. It's the chat that makes the stuff in all these lives cool. It's y'all. It's not me. I can sit up there and ramble for a long time, which ain't too bad, but it's not as cool as y'all doing the chat. And a lot of y'all know more than me. So, it's a chance for everybody to learn. Okay, I don't want to mispronounce that. Imogene Scott 346. That's Star Trek. Yeah, that was called that episode was called The Survivors, and that being called himself a Dowd. That was probably one of my favorite episodes. I really liked it because Picard popped up on him like that third time they beamed down. They was waltzing. Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting the waltz. And the cat looked at him. He said, "What do you want?" He said, "Man, you didn't expect to see me again. That's the reason why you're acting like that." And Picard was good. It took him a second, but he caught on to that cat. And the way that they kind of did the revealing at the end just was one of those deals. In the days of VCR, I was hitting that rewind, had to go back and be kind and rewind because that was just intense, and it took you to the next level of thinking. When he said that, he said, they said, "That's what you didn't want us to know. You destroyed the ship." He's kind of looked up at him, and that cat was from the Rifleman. He's a Westerns guy, and all those Westerns. And he looked at him. He said, "Man, you don't understand what I did." He said, "I didn't understand. I didn't just destroy that ship or 100 or 1,000. I destroyed them all everywhere." And that's when nobody said anything. They was as quiet as I was. I just sitting there like, whoa. And then that's when Picard's like, "Let's go ahead and beam him on back down. They're going down there and keep waltzing with your wife, your fantasy wife." Well, he was a creature, a Dowd, a creature of false guises and surroundings, and could project them and create them. Q could do that to a degree also. And when it comes down to Trelane, who was the one on the original Star Trek, at the very end of that, because he was dressed up, he looked like Liberace to me. I don't know, but he was messing with Kirk and all them. And then finally at the very end, when Kirk beat him or whatever, he's getting mad. He's acting like a little kid. And that's when all of a sudden those lights came and said, "Trelane, you come home now. So you keep doing it. These are sentient beings. You keep doing stuff like this, you will not be allowed to make any more planets." And he was sitting there going, "But I was winning. I was. And, at the end, Spock asked Kirk, he said, "What should we classify him as? Super being, as what?" And Kirk's like, "Just a naughty boy, a naughty kid." That episode, the voice, Trelane's dad that was speaking to him at the end, one of those lights, that was James Doohan, Scotty, how he really sounds. He's not Scottish anyway. I wasn't. Why are we Amy at 346, why are we mind wiped during abductions too? Probably best way anyhow. Most of the time there's two things going on with that. One is it's trauma and they use screen memories to hide that. Okay. There's another reason, like for me, for example, I mentioned this before, that when I get done with it. It's first experience missing time when I was about 18, and there's somebody else was with me. And they're missing time too, because at first I'm trying to get back to town so I can write all this stuff down, speak it into a recorder or something, you know what I mean? And By the time we get the 10 miles to town or whatever, we're looking at each other going, what happened? And it's fading by the minute. It's fading, fading. The further we get from the event horizon, it started fading. So I tripped out, but I knew this was a positive experience. The other individual with me said it was positive what happened. And I was like, yeah, but why? But you start thinking like, Then I start looking into stuff like Dr. Carla Turner. Maybe they mind wipe me. You know what I mean? You start thinking that. But in my experience, what happened, why I couldn't remember and why it was hard to remember the event the further I got from the event horizon is because of the vibration, the speed that these encounters happen. The speed those beings exist on and the speed I'm in, they're totally different. They're way faster. Like I said before, even the inside and outside of those ships are not in the same dimension. So when you're around one of them, you know what I mean? It's going to be even worse. And then when outside of that craft, it's hard to retain the memory of that event horizon the further you get away from it. It's a vibrational difference. I don't even want to say frequency. You could say frequency, vibrational frequency difference, but that's what it was, opposed to them actually doing something to me to stop me from forgetting. But you know what? My superconscious remembers everything. And I went through years saying, I'm not like Barney Hill or Travis Walton. I didn't get my mind wiped. I'm a conscious experiencer. And that's true. But for somebody that was missing almost 20 hours of their life in 4 different encounters, what I could remember consciously was fragmented and really not that good for that amount of time. But I was in denial. I learned hypnosis, became a hypnotist, and still was in denial of getting one for myself. You know what I mean? And then when I finally did, even I was blown away by the information that came out of it. Each one of them really blown away. So in that way, I'm really against people that say, oh, never use hypnosis to find out what happened to you. And I know some people in the field that were making comments like that, and I disagree because I was one of those people, and I thought I was. Look, what I could remember was a lot. These sketches, most all of them, I was able to do without having to be put in hypnosis. Okay, I could remember this stuff, but I remember the technology, but not like when I was actually there. When you're on board that ship, not just are you getting telethought and stuff from the beings that half of them are invisible, you're getting that from the ship too. There's like information connecting with the ship constantly. That's why I've said that I underestimated how sentient these ships are. I have a feeling that ship, this one here, especially, knew me from past incarnations. You know, why was nobody escorting me around? They're with me, but I'm not like being escorted like a police escort or nothing and moving around that craft. It knew I wasn't going to really steal nothing or do nothing. It knows my intentions because I think it knows my soul life memories. And I think the other ones I've been on too, these life ships, ones have those honeycomb type things on it, and that's just me where I underestimated what I was dealing with. I'm listening to these other people saying, oh, I was flying the ship. I was doing this and that. And that's a common theme right now for contact. Oh, I fly the ships. They're mentally connected. Been knowing that, but look, I didn't fly the ship. I didn't fly that craft. That craft was operating itself. And I think that it's not some horse you just jump on and ride like that. That's something different going on there. There's an entwining, a symbiotic connection with the crew. They're already with that, but the ship is obviously very aware itself. And I'm pretty sure it's operating with them voluntarily. It's a symbiotic conjoined operation. You know what I mean? To the fact of where you have in the belly of that craft, like other civilizations that can help manifest another craft in the belly, in the bottom of that, in that room I had showed you. And that's what we start doing with the reproduction cycle of life, of space species or whatever they are. Whole nother thing going on. And I think that's where our science is going to go. Just like I had mentioned, not just when it comes to bacterial and viral, also space exploration. And even what I mentioned earlier about the phage lambda, that positive bacteria, when you deal with the earth and what's called the deep biosphere, look that up. I'm talking about it a lot. Look how many of the species of undiscovered bacterial and fungal are on this planet there. Like over 90% high 90s. So you tell me there's not a phage lambda that's part of Earth. or something much stronger, viral, bacterial, okay, stronger than that, that contains more light, more things that will eat negative microorganisms. What if we activated that on a global conscious level? Whether we need the aid of gamma rays or whatever, we've got the tech, but consciously activate it and use that to reform our planet and to help regenerate our planet. See, something like that needs to be taken very seriously. And we've got beings that come here and go down into the biosphere, organic craft. And if, we're going to get that kind of help, we could get it from some of them possibly. We got to reach out, more than just knowing about radiotropic fungus, which grows on the walls of Fukushima and walls of Chernobyl, and the theories that supposedly Quiche was going to make those and into help for radiation cleanup. Nothing ever came of that. I heard nothing more about that, but then I talked to scientists saying they thought that melanin dominant bacteria or fungus that uses its actually melanin to convert gamma radiation to the growth cycle, like the Hulk, could have been sent here by a very advanced civilization that's on the pico level to help us with the radiation cleanup. That's stuff we don't hear though. And even those quote unquote scientists that told me that, I never talked to them again. They were gone. Just like there was a scientist that contacted me, he swore that he worked at the Hexel lab on some of the composites that I was talking about. And when dealing with the Hexel company, they have a composite that is a honeycomb composite that looks like these hexagons all put together. And I wonder why is it that that's what bees use to actually store their energy and things? And why was that what I was seeing on the ship? Why does that seem to be connected to C60? See what I mean? These things like this that come forward, I think, are very important. But that's ways that we talk about, these ways of bringing energy or matter, substances from one dimension or universe to another. They're done through certain geometric shapes, and that's one of them. The cube, the hexagon, the honeycomb type of structure. That's two of the ways. There's one craft goes on. It was not the one I just showed, but it had these hexagons. Here's the one. This is good enough. Again, dealing with this craft here, right? Oh, this was really big. When you get down there, that was a type of, almost looked like C60, but it was emitting that very deep golden light energy. Okay, and it was so much that's what those rings, I think, were polarizing and sending up into that black box up there, that they termed, to me in my mind, inertial dampener. That was used for not just power, but to release actually the energy of anti-gravity field around the skin of the ship. Okay. And I have, real quick, just for fun, before I get out of here, I have talked a few times about that anti-gravity field that they release in a situation like that around one of those craft, and how it has how you can pick that up in certain photos. Wow. I might have actually thrown that away. There's a little piece of paper. Let's see. Anyway, we're dealing with the concept of life energy and stuff from different dimensions. It's a whole other thing going on. So I think crystals is another thing that most definitely must be looked into as well. Wow, amazing. I might have thrown it away. I'm sorry, folks. It was just a little picture of a craft I had taken that shows the anti-gravity. It was actually the Each trying to see photo of 1964, I think it was. Oh, there it is. This photo right here. Okay, and I've showed this before in another live probably. But when I talk about that other thing that we saw and the black box that released anti-gravity modification field around the craft, around the skin of the craft, all right? When I look at old photos like this, I can tell which ones are probably true and which ones aren't. Based on the fact that when you deal with that type of a life energy, orgone energized like that, it has a negative impact on film emulsions from that era. So you'll see a big void underneath the craft where that's being generated, that anti-gravity field. This picture, I think, is especially interesting because if you look at it, you see the side over here? See, it's beginning to generate, it's generating and setting that whole gravity modification field around the skin of that ship, that void. And what's going to happen is it's going to make a jump through probably a mako, a black hole, a mini one, to go to another destination. So it's little pictures like that, when they have a big void underneath it that are older ones, like the 60s pictures, it gives me much more validation than other things. And it's sad with today's technology, you almost have to go back to stuff like that to really pick up a. All right, keep going down. Steve, what's happening? Thanks for coming, man. 349. Talking about dimensions, third dimension, fourth dimension. You know, I got to be honest. I don't really believe that so much. I don't think we really understand dimensions with our science too much. And when I say that, it's because some of these beings I was dealing with were telling me they came from the 16th dimension and upwards. So what does that mean? Our science, even until quantum physics, wasn't even going that high with dimensions. They were saying like there were 10 dimensions. And there's that Umite material, the Umite material, Ummite. And that's one that I had Jessica remote view, was the Umites and the material where it came from. That was a good show too. That's on the remote viewing on my channel. You just go there on the playlist. Anyway, the Umites had said that too, that there was like a 10 unity universally. And I was like, man, that's still a little bit off, because that's 16. I used to wonder if these beings like lying to me or something, because our science hadn't got there. But it's just fascinating, you know what I mean? So I think when we start dealing with dimensions, vibrations, and also especially frequencies, and I had mentioned the book Earth, the Only Planet of Choice, and how they talk about them there, the quote unquote Council of Nine from the Zone of Cold, talk about how here on Earth, they're like, it's similar to what I had learned, like kind of the layers of an onion, and that there's just a frequency, the vibration separating each one. And they talk about different, as they called them in that book, civilizations that exist, you know, on Earth here in different dimensions, different vibrational frequencies. There's so many of them, you know what I mean? And when we detonate something like an atomic hydrogen bomb, it actually rips through the dimensions, through the vibrations, through the frequencies, like for like however many, maybe all of them, who knows? And that's when you start seeing Foo Fighters and things like that, which is another thing I was very interested to give Jessica that last target we did over the Russian not flight attendant alien photobomb thing. And it's so interesting, she came up with Foo Fighter and that data. That really, I found that interesting. Is that what's on board those things, or is it something that we're back engineering? What's going on there? You know, that was the kind of the trip. Dr. Pepper's got a lot of sugar. Apparently not enough to make you turn into a werewolf, right? maybe he should have been drinking some Dr. Pepper at the what was it called? The Slaughtered Lamb? Was that the name of that bar they went to before they got attacked? Those people just let them walk out of there too, walk up the road. Oh, stay on the road, lads. I mean, they'll do all that. They couldn't do that. They got lost out there. That was kind of rough, I thought, man. They knew those guys were going to get jacked, man. Instead of walk on out there. Big time monster out there, man. They eat 8 people for God knows how long. They even said it. They said, oh, yeah, it was howling. You heard that? One guy said there, I didn't hear nothing. One lady said, it's murder. Sorry. Anyway. Ooh. What's up, Jim? Thank you for coming. Intermystic. What about the so-called Galactic Federation Council? I mean, take your turn on it. You got half people saying they're good. Now all of a sudden they're bad. I mean, it goes on and on. I will say this: when it comes to Galactic Federation, I've given Jessica a couple of blind targets. One would be the plasma balls that made that crop circle in Wiltshire and was filmed. Like actually, it's like 4 of them that make it, and then they go back up. The first there's 3, then there's 4. Anyway, I had a remote view that one blind target, and another one that I gave her that this came up again is a blind target of the Zimbabwe children. And I really, it kind of mentioned before. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but what really motivated me to give her that target was another one of Preston Dennett's books. Here. Oh, sorry, that's the healing book. That's a good one too. The second healing book. All those are good. Well, maybe took that out too. Sorry. Anyway, there it is. It's Schoolyard Encounters. I think a lot of people are getting much more hip to this book now, so it's more better known than it was. But like I said, he's got about 70 cases in there that are similar to Zimbabwe children. And in that way, the Zimbabwe children are not, rare, I don't think. Not like we think. And one of them, Lisa Fields, I talk to her occasionally. She's one of my friends on Facebook. So they're not children anymore. She was showing me pictures of her grandkids. So it's not. We realized 1991 was a long time ago, whatever year that was. Anyway, when it comes to those 2 targets, all right, Jessica had picked up Galactic Federation stuff. And the reason why I wanted to know, because that the one with the schoolyard, I gave her that target and also a target of who was messing with the nukes that we hear so much about, these UFOs that go around nuclear silos and activate or deactivate them or whatever. I want to know who was doing that. And who was it that was taking a time to reach out to these children around the world and tell them, look out for the planet? Who cared enough to do that? And so that was the main reason I gave her those targets. And who cared enough to do the crop circles? And when you really look at the science of Dr. Livingood behind the crop circles and how they could be an answer for food shortage and other things, it gets really, really, really fascinating. Who cared enough to even show us that? And that's what she kept picking up, this Galactic Federation stuff. And look, and I'll just say one thing about, okay, I've always, and that's going back to, I just always laughed at that term, because that's not the name of the group I deal with. They sound even as weird. But that and the Ashtar used to kind of just laugh at that stuff, and especially Galactic Federation, because to me it sounded like a Star Trek ripoff. Okay, but now when going into it, it's a little bit more than that. And I was watching this show I just mentioned the other day on Jessica's show. I was watching an episode of show I liked as a kid called The Tomorrow People. Came out about 1976 to 79, and it was a British production, and it was about the Tomorrow People are supposed to be quote unquote homo superior. They're extreme telepaths. They can teleport, all these different gifts they have, and what humanity's supposed to evolve into. That was them. But they have this artificial intelligence that kind of helps them. That the first Tomorrow People that what do they call it when they come out? They break out. They could go through this horrible sickness and they break out to where they're high level. And he built this thing, and this thing is getting all tomorrow people together saying that this ambassador is coming from the Galactic Federation. And they just kept using that word, the Galactic Federation, this and that, and you'll become part of the. I mean, it was really a trip. I was like, well, that's like that episode was 1977. I said, using that term that far back there. I found that kind of interesting, okay, because Star Trek is the Federation, the Starfleet, United Federation of Planets. It's not the Galactic Federation. So just interesting, you know, but I see so many people, I just kind of stay out of it because I see so many people arguing about it. One group called people, you're stupid. You don't realize they're the enslavers. Other people say, no, they're not. And it's just these people arguing when I would really question how many of them really met any of these beings in person or really have communicated with any of them. Honestly, just being honest, okay? To really say anything, to know who's doing what. And you got so many factions on this planet interacting with this planet. Factions that are extraterrestrial, interdimensional, multidimensional. Okay, that a whole nother thing that is it's scary. And those that only come and really interact with the other Earth, these other frequencies where non-physicals are much more adjusted to, and they can kind of bleed through into this third dimensional sometimes, or more often because things are changing. So stuff like that, I don't know. I'm not going to say, yeah, they're definitely good, they're definitely bad. I don't know. I've not dealt with those beings, but in the data Jessica has shows them as positive. And anybody wants to go back and look at that episode of Crop Circles, I'll tell you, that's my friend. She got pretty emotional on that one. You know, I try not to give any targets that are going to either put her in jeopardy or be too much strain on her, you know, but that was one she got. And it was the message. Jessica, if you're still in chat, please let them know what it was. Was it you still have help, don't give up or stuff like that? It was quite a positive thing. So maybe we shouldn't always throw the baby out with the bathwater on the Galactic Federation. But the beings I dealt with, the name they gave me was even more wacky. I was 36 before I finally got a name. And there's the Extragalactic Interdimensional Cooperative Alliance. And I said, that came through, that was a telepathic like download. I was out walking, doing I survived traumatic brain injury walk about 4:00 in the morning. And I said, you know, I just stopped walking and I said, forget the telepathy. I said out loud, I said, are you effing kidding me? Am I supposed to tell people that name? I'm going to get laughed harder than I laughed at the Ashtar Command. And you know, you can feel when the star beings definitely, they've got a weird sense of humor anyway when they're not joking. There's no joke. They're telling me to look at the cooperative aspect from micro to macro. I get it more now. I understand more now. But then it was just, it's just hard to accept. When all this stuff happens, it takes a minute to process and really just digest it, at least for me. I don't know about y'all, but I'm just a person. I'm not some super guru walking around. You know, it's not like that. I'd be tripped out, man. All those encounters, I feel brand new every time. So anyway. Inner Mystic. I don't know who that is. I answered your question. Why are we never mind wiped from NDE? It's because you don't go all the way through the process. You're not all the way joined with the mind of God. Okay, you haven't gone all the way through the beak of the eagle. You have come back. So where would you be wiped from that? And I'm speaking from somebody that was in a coma for 2.5 weeks. So 2 weeks. So I had to deal with the fact that I had brain things that were different and how much of that was what I was not remembering and having to deal with. And I think that's a bit different than those that just have a boom, boom type of deal. And they're not unconscious for a long time. So the reason why I didn't have full conscious memory wouldn't be the reasons that they would. They still do. It's different. When you take an injury like I did and you were under for that long, letting your brain to actually regenerate. So that's how I already answered that question once. Why we're not wiped during NDE. You don't go all the way through the death process. Pretty simple. Next up, Elizabeth. I don't know what that is. I think I'm getting through. Oh, there's still stuff going on. Ooh. Good people, that works. Hopi woman hairstyles look like Tyrolean fields. Mm-hmm. So do the ancient pharaoh ones too. In fact, there's like three different. Ada had shown like three different types of braiding systems that are supposed to be conducive to organic fields or orgone fields and also electrical fields too. So it kind of started taking in. She was kind of contrasting some of the braids with the Electrical Universe book and some of the things in there. Pretty good. I can't mention everything she did. I can't quote it. That wasn't my work, but it was good. It was really good. Cryptoville, awesome information. Thank you, man. Thanks for coming. Darcy, thank you. I thank you for coming, my friend. I really appreciate that. It's a nice comment. Thank you. Ascent of Phoenix, what's happening, my friend? How you doing? I think that's Susan. What's up, Susan? I think. I might be wrong. There's not. But either way, welcome, my friend. Thank you for coming. Tamara, true, although I remember myself and family did have to relearn how to walk and did motor skills and physical therapy. Yeah, I went through that. It was not fun. The weird thing is that when I had to like when I come I'd like relearn how to walk and stuff and get my body like strengthened again. But the odd thing is my ex had said, she said it was a trip to watch you have to learn how to walk again. She said, not long after you woke up, you were walking around quite well to the point they had to actually shut that gate because you were trying to leave. I was thinking, what? She goes, but then when you remembered who you were, it's like you couldn't walk anymore. You had to learn it again. She said it was really a trip. So stuff like that, you know, I don't understand it all. The body is a mystery in many ways. I taught myself too, Barry, so I could view my encounters in third person and process them. I taught myself because I was scared and thought people don't talk about them. I know exactly what you mean, Amy. I went through that too. I you know, I had to get past the fact though that I didn't know as much as I thought I did because I knew quite a bit, could remember quite a bit, but it just wasn't enough for the missing time. I had to take that next step. But boy, it was hard. It was hard though. Ooh, Amy. Um, Sasquatch Message to Humanity. You know, I've heard that book before. I wouldn't even say I've even seen that book before. Me- Sasquatch Message to Humanity. Oh, that's ringing a bell. I can almost see the cover. Was Patty on the cover of that book? Just the Patty image? It's really interesting to hear that. What's up, Jessica? 417. I'm almost caught up. Oh, not. It's 417. Good chat. I agree, Tamara. At my Raj, Tamara, she's talking about an episode of The Twilight Zone I just saw the other night. It's Queen of the Nile, and the lady, some sort of she's like a movie star, and the interviewer's coming around saying, "Man, you were like starring in movies like 40 years ago. You could have been very old." And the thing is, she had the scarab beetle that she was draining life force from people and used it to keep herself young. That's real good. I like a lot of those old Twilight Zones. I don't know. I think maybe it's like four or five of them. It's hard to pick an exact favorite, but I'll tell you one I really liked is the one with Agnes Moorehead that played Endora on the original Bewitched, Sam's mother. And it's an episode where she's like this woman out in the country and she hears something like a meteor or something over, and she starts seeing these look like these little robot things, and she's just tearing them up. And she finally goes up there and like smashes the ship with a broom or a bat or something because they're like shooting her and just make these little zit looking things. But when it's over, you see the other side of the ship and you hear this mission control, race of giants here. Do not send reinforcements. Very hostile. And it kind of took it to another level, kind of like the little people. I like that one too. The little people, where the dude's tripping, saying, "I was over there. They built a statue for me because I might smash one of their cities. I might step on it and stuff like that." It's little, and then when another ship comes, those cats are the size of mountains. You know what I mean? That's just very interesting. Some of the ways that Rod Serling kind of took interesting things. And I mentioned before, when it comes to the Twilight Zone, when I had the interaction with that rude man, Stephen Gibbs, who sent me this blasted HDR hyperdimensional resonator unit, which actually does not function anymore. He was making large claims about this device and making physical jumps with it. And I asked him, so what's the weirdest thing that's happened to you with this thing? And he said, well, I sold one to Rod Serling. I was like, really? He said, man, the timeline I come from, there was no Twilight Zone. I sold one of these devices to Rod Serling, and he said he was going into the past and make the Twilight Zone. And I'm just, yeah, okay, sure. Then he says this, have you watched those? I said, yeah, I watched most of them, actually. I was a Twilight Zone fan. He says, have you ever noticed how a lot of them are about time travel? Couldn't say much on that. You know what I mean? Anyway, just the things that we encounter, The movie Adam Project. Never seen that. All right, don't worry, folks. I'm almost there, and I'll let everybody go. Wow, is everybody still going? I thought I was there. It's 20 up for 428. I'm not saying much because everybody's just kind of having a really good chat. Kind of relaying experiences with each other. See, that's really what it's all about. That's cool. That's why there's no right or wrong. It's just different experience because we all have different experiences and bringing it together. If anything I can ever bring to people, if it's that, Boondock Mojo. When it does that, it's like something is pulling it instead of propelling the craft. So check this out. Check out what they're calling now negative matter. Okay, not antimatter, but negative matter, and how negative matter actually will have a repelling propulsion towards gravity, like at a massive degree, to where if you were actually going to do something like an Alcubierre warp drive or something that is wrapping a warp field around the craft itself and then pulling the space towards the craft in that way, okay, using the negative matter and gravitational waves would be almost instantaneous. You couple that with wormholes as well, black holes, aka Makos, whole nother level. You know what I mean? So that's good. Yeah, check out negative matter. It's interesting because they claim, they claim they haven't actually discovered negative matter. They haven't been able to prove it yet, unlike antimatter. But dealing with, Jessica, you love this, dealing with CERN and these other hadron colliders, I don't think I believe that. I think they probably have discovered negative matter. But it's so revolutionary to warp physics and hyperdimensional travel that they're probably not, releasing it yet. This is my theory anyway, because it's one of those things that seems, it's just so correct theoretically. What's up, Kyle? Thanks for coming, man. Oh, that's something I wanted to mention. Thank you, Kyle. A lot of people have told me lately too that they have to go back on this channel and hit the bell again. They'd already done the bell and everything, and then it just goes off, or for whatever reason, when I release new stuff, they're not getting a notification. They're still subscribed, but for whatever reason, the bell, they have to go back and hit it again. I had somebody told me they had to do it 3 times now, so I don't know if that's a shadow banning or what that is. I think it goes to 19 dimensions, Barry. I don't know the post the seventh though, as the beings that I've known are from the fourth, fifth, and seventh. I believe Denny Hinnett said 19. I might have spelled it wrong. Yeah, those individuals don't interact with me very much. You've got a line of these ladies, or these SSP ladies, whatever they are. They don't interact with people like me. I'm not cool enough, I guess, or I don't have enough fantastical story to go or something. That's one of the things I noticed. Certain people that we just won't vibe. You know what I mean? Certain one of them, I don't get into their work either. I can't even stand to look at them and listen to them. Just being honest. I'm not pointing anybody in particular, but it's just interesting that for this field is so selective with people. You know what I mean? It becomes a more of who you know, what you know type of thing. So it's real interesting. But as far as 19 dimensions, there might be. I don't know. This one just told me 16 and upwards. And like I said, I think mathematically we really don't know, especially when you start dealing with quantum entanglement of how many dimensions there actually are. And the fact that we have the second law of thermodynamics. Now, I mentioned before that this is not a closed universe we live in. Okay, it's expanding. That's been proving. But as it's expanding, it's also the entropy, I believe, is being released by actually makos and wormholes, and outside that the exit aperture is other universes themselves that go beyond just our study of what we call the multiverse. A lot of times the multiverse is shown as being bubbles. I think maybe it goes quite a bit beyond that as far as structure of different universes. So anyway, that's another thing here or there. J Truth Seeker, what's happening? Kyle, Amy, Madge River, what's happening? Oh, there's one there. Sorry, Boondock, I went past it. I saw you said something. Oh. Barry, have you ever researched how certain beings use amulets to travel from one dimension to another and back? I have an interesting photo of one wearing an amulet. There's supposed to be quote unquote what they call the Ebens, a type of Eben, and they're the ones that have the higher collared uniforms, but they've been seen wearing these amulet things. They're kind of big, and they use those for some type of a like jumping, dimensional jumping or something. And that's what I heard about that the most. The others would be when going in amulets, go back and look at some of the things that were supposedly the Nagas had amulets too they were using. But as far as extraterrestrials, it was that being of a type of Eben that I've seen with that. It's like a crystalline looking type of I would almost try to pull it up, but it'll take me too long to find the picture in my database. But that's when I saw that represented the most, is them using that. Everybody's talking about eBay. Sorry, I'm lost on that one. Center Phoenix, Susan, I think. Barry, what's your opinion of the work of Norman Berg and specifically the Ringmakers of Saturn's testimonies, seeing all tall black aliens? You know, that book, along with Somebody Else is on the Moon by who was that book by? Raymond Moody? Not Raymond Moody. Gosh, Somebody Else is on the Moon. Anyway, that and Ringmakers of Saturn, I got guided to those when I was in like the 5th grade. Seriously, I was going up to the library, riding my bike up there, and I was looking for books on this stuff, and I got guided to those books. Now, the Ringmakers of Saturn was a little harder for me to understand at that age than it was the Somebody Else is on the Moon, because the Ringmakers of Saturn, he has a lot of telemetry information on there that I couldn't really understand at that time, but I could read what he was saying, that he thought that the rings were being mined by these large, miles long, 100-mile long ships out there, and that they were either mining or making the rings. And as far as that whole thing with that's become. I mean, it's one interview with that Carrie Cassidy woman, and it's a trip because I don't think she's aware of how much the black community of contactees took an issue with her for that video. Not of the way that she tried to downplay the fact that he said it was black people. He says black people get off, and she's like, "Is it brown people? Were they brown?" And then I always laugh because he's like, "No, they were black." So I thought it was funny, man. You know what I mean? But he said that he didn't even say those beings were from Saturn. He said they came down in the naval shipyard. Yeah, so that was, so that's I found that comedy actually. But as far as what he was saying about the construction of the rings, I think that's fascinating. You know, also I don't know where he would stand on Euclides, that moon of Saturn who's ejecting the it has the mass ejections that they thought are actually contributing to the rings themselves. You might want to go back on my channel, look up a video I put out a few weeks ago called Pinecone Spacecraft, and how that's something I had got. These beings are telling me about these ships that look similar to pine cones in the terms of how pine cones open and close after they've been disconnected from the tree for like a couple of years. According, it's a mechanical deal that they do with moisture, heat, cold. They still open and close, but that these organisms are ejected like that on Euclides. But this is a different galaxy, okay? And when they look at some of the bigger galaxies, like M, whatever it was, anyway, that they're saying that these things actually go through space. They sail through space, almost like wind sails. But then when they come near a star, however long that is, they start opening up like a pine cone, and they start actually accumulating solar radiation of different type for more interstellar travel. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And these beings are telling me that's one of the stops of ships, types of organic living ships I was unaware of. And in fact, in that video, I gave a galaxy that they were telling me to pay attention to. It's one of the super galaxy. It's huge. And I think when you look at it, it looks weird because you can see a large amount of like almost dark energy in it, like which would be a large Mako in the middle of it. Very fascinating, Anyway, that's my opinion on Norman. I thought just that video was funny. For the record too, I know that there are a lot of brothers that was mad at Carrie Cassidy for that. I had tried to reach out to her once or twice, like, hey, if you want to talk to the community and maybe get a better reputation, I could help you a little bit, but I never heard back from her. But I see she's doing conferences now and everything, and I did that because especially there's one person that hates my guts was going after her real hard. But what they were saying was right, saying she was avoiding the black subject on extraterrestrials purposely. So here I am. If you want to help with that, you talk to somebody, maybe open up a whole nother audience that is not hip to you right now, that doesn't like you. Maybe change it. It's worth a shot. Just offering, you know what I mean? I don't know the woman, but I don't have any problem with her work or nothing. So I don't know. Anyway, hope that answers that. What's up, Steve Wolf? Thanks for coming, man. John aside. Phoenix is actually how the very book informative. Everybody's talking about ambulance. I wonder if it's the same photo of the amulet being I have. I've got like two of them. They're they're Ebens of some type. God, I almost want to look it up. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Just on GP. I think I'm going to get some catfish for dinner tonight. My brother's feeling some catfish. You understand? Ah, here it is. I found it. Wow, that was a little too easy. Where are we at here? Oh, here it comes. Give me 1 second. There you go. That's the photo I have. Seen one other, but that's the one that came up immediately. And the one that I had seen, the story that it came with this, that it allowed communication to and from the ship. But also, I recall it saying something like, I see it says down there it's used as a laser beam too, but I thought it said something that it could be like used like a transporter too. You know what I mean? Like you could press that instead of having Scotty do it. Anyway, that's the one I've come up with, and I found that interesting. But that was described as being like a type of eben of some type. I was kind of interesting in looking at the different type of ebens and also the ones that have the rope dress and the big noses. Because you remember I mentioned before that when I had first heard Betty Hill talking about the leader of those Zeta Reticulans, how he looked a little bit different than the others, that he had this big nose. I remember she said he had a nose like Truman Capote. And that dude, no, not Truman Capote. Sorry, Jimmy Durante. She said he had a nose like Jimmy Durante, and that was that comedian known as the Snoz because he had a big nose. So these different types of Ebians, I think, are interesting. To be honest with you, I don't get particularly a good feeling from this illustration. It's not a being I'd really care to interact with or encounter. Anyway, sorry. Sorry, I went back on accident back to Norman Bergen again. Sorry. Barry, do you teach hypnosis technique? No, but I've been asked to quite a bit, to be honest. But no, I haven't done. I've been asked to especially teach Earthbound Spirit Release the way I do it. Haven't got to that point yet, but I might though. Thanks for asking. I appreciate that. I've always really liked instant and rapid inductions. Instant inductions, which you can do with it takes like 5 seconds. It's kind of weird because it takes a second to get them deeper for like therapy. And I kind of like for the hypnosis to be so deep that it's very therapeutic. You know what I mean? But when you see things like stage hypnosis and things, people are just kind of in that light, deep kind of alpha. I like to get people down to deep theta, to be honest with you, almost delta sometimes. Because sometimes people have to be in delta to really bypass the conscious mind to access whether it be earthbound spirits or some of these missing memories. I had a client recently that these beings are throwing um, screen memories during the session, but this one was so unique in that this individual was watching an abduction between them and their partner, okay, for mantid beings, and they're observing everything, the room and everything, and then one of the mantids starts pointing at them and then pointing to their body, pointing to them that's there with me during the watching during the hypnosis session, and then pointing to their body and back to them, the body back to them, and then the other mantid in the room, one of them's in a control panel and starts going erratic to where the client mentioned that they looked like this mantid looked like it was in a frenzy almost. But the way they would react is different, but pushing things, and then the screen came after that, and everything. But I think actually they interrupted their own abduction during the session we were doing, but that shows you about how temporally things are different. We were doing that session recently, but that abduction was 25 years ago. See what I mean? So it's these things are done understand as we understand it. Like I said, folks, I don't make the rules. I just take the notes and try to understand it, which is none too easy anyway. It was Como, a male Sasquatch elder. Sasquatch elders are quite interesting. That's what I've had interaction with. And I think when you deal with the elders, you really deal with those that can manipulate the portals. Sorry, I know what you guys are talking about, a Bigfoot book. Maybe it's the other one you mentioned, Sasquatch Message to Humanity. J True Seeker, awaken, wait, welcome. Oh, I think I already said that. Sorry. A skeleton key in a book? Oh, that's a trip. Wow, that would be cool. Man, that sounds cool. Amy, I think you're talking about you running out of the woods. Was that a Sasquatch chased you out, or? I remember Stephen Gibbs talked to him personally. You know, Stephen Gibbs, to me, he's an asshole, man, to me. But sorry, I should be cussing. You know, I don't have him in here, but I got probably 10 journals from him. And they're actually quite advanced, a couple of them. And they got schematics in them for all sorts of different time devices that he didn't make. And he started telling me that he was invited to a time travelers convention, time creator, time machine creator, time technology creator conference or something. And he claimed that everybody, all the inventors that went to that conference disappeared. And they're all now in some type of mental health institution that all the people in there say they're time travelers. That's what he said. He gave me a lot of story. I talked to that cat the first time I talked to him, it was like for an hour and something. And then the second time I got that device, he sent it to me for $75. He said normally he's cutting me a deal because normally they're 400 and something. Well, I guess he sent that for $75. And then he sent all these. I ordered all those manuals from him. Actually, my friend's got them right now, but there's a bunch of them. And I mean, some of them are kind of interesting. I started looking at some of them because one, I had to make sure before I use that hyperdimensional resonator, I wasn't going to fry my balls, man. That thing has got a headband you put around it. It's got a big old electric magnet that I couldn't even put around my computer right now and probably zap it. Okay, and you put that thing around you. So I wanted to make sure before I use this thing, I wasn't going to fry my balls, man. And so I had my friend engineer look at it. Bill Spicer, the first person that got me to come forward, actually. And we pulled it apart, looked at it and stuff. And then he looked at the schematics I had in those other journals. And he thought they were advanced too. And Bill's got a pretty good understanding of quantum physics and engineering and other things. And he is an engineer. And so he said, look at me, he said, where'd you get this? I was like, it's kind of weird. And so I called Stephen Gibbs back. It's like the third time we talked, third or fourth the last time. I was like, where'd you get these manuals? Because he told me that they weren't going to. Well, he called me to see if I got the machine. And he's like, I sent that to you. He goes, but the journals, I'll get them to you in a couple of weeks. My printer went down and yada, 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 yada. But these journals came like 2 days later, maybe a day later. I look at him when I call him, I said, where'd you get these journals from? And it was so interesting because the fact that Bill was somewhat amazed by them caught my attention. So I said, where'd you get this? He tells me from time travelers from the future. And one of them was myself. And that was interesting. And I tried to give the man a little bit of leeway because our first conversation, he starts telling me, I wondered when I was going to talk to you again. I was like, you never talk to me. And he's like, well, I have definitely. He goes, you sounded a little older then. He said, but I recognize your inflections. And I hear him flipping his pages and stuff or something. And I said, man, when is it you think you talked to me? He says, it's 2 years ago. And at that point, I said, well, it definitely wasn't me because at that date then, I said, 2 years ago at this time, I was in a coma. And I wasn't talking to nobody for quite some time, you know? And then then he says this. Have you seen your double yet? And that's when it got real weird. Because those of you that really followed why I'm into time science, okay, and why I like time technology and try to stay apprised of it, is because I've seen myself before. And I was 7 years old walking home, and I seen this brother on the bridge. I didn't know it was me at that time, but he looked like he was a family member, but he looked different. He had hair like this, okay? And my brothers at that time, that was the Wave Nouveau Jerry Curl era. And one of my brothers lived in LA and the other one was not around. He's working the other side of town. Okay. So it wasn't one of my family members. This guy looks like a family member. I remember running home and telling my mom was on the phone and I told her, I wanted to come get a look at this dude just to come get a look at it, but she wouldn't do it. She's talking on the phone, and he didn't really interrupt mom when she's on the phone. It wasn't often a good idea, but I tried to get her. So I tried to say, hey, there's a dude down there trying to give me some candy, but it still didn't work. She didn't. I used to get in trouble because they say, Barry, what are you going to do if some man tries to give you candy? I was like, I'm going to grab that candy. I'm going to run. They're like, no, son, no, you don't take the candy. I was like, but I'm fast. They say, it doesn't matter, son. You don't take the candy. Anyway, but she didn't come look, but it turns out later, well, I'm about 22. I'm seeing myself in this mirror. It's after I cut my hair, 21 actually, to this type of a format, and I'm wearing the outfit that this cat was wearing on the bridge. And so there's no way Stephen Gibbs could have known that. And he starts asking me, he said, did you touch him? I was like, no. He said, did you try? I said, actually, I stepped on the bridge. When I stepped on the bridge, he stepped off the bridge and was shaking his hand. He threw his hands up, went like that. And so I just ran off. And Stephen says, yeah, if you would have touched him, there'd be parts of your memory, parts of your life you couldn't remember right now. He's like, do you have any memory problems from your accident? I said, none at all. He's like, that's what it is. I was like, what? He said he was doing something. He did something to your timeline and something to mine. He said, are you kind of odd? I said, what do you mean odd, man? He said, are you like, were you hurt really bad, but you healed really much quicker and much better than anybody thinks possible? I said, as a matter of fact, kind of, yeah. I heard that from several doctors. And because I had a whole team looking at me, believe me. And he said, that's what it is. He did something to help you. And it was a bizarre interaction. It was so bizarre, J Truth Seeker, that's why I called him back later and decided just to go ahead and come off $75 to get one of these machines. I was too curious to not drop $75. Hell, that's a night out of the town, a good dinner or something. But I was like, man, I wanted to see one. I wanted to try it and experiment with it. And I worked with that thing a whole lot. And I was going to have a friend try to build some of these other devices that he had on there, but Radio Shack went out of service. And I'm pretty sure out of business. I'm pretty sure all this stuff here for this dimensional resonator is from Radio Shack. And what is it? It's really what you call what is it? The touching device. It's a touching pad on it. What do you call that? All these devices. Oh, there's a few of them, like the wish machine and all those. They're called. Anyway, just interesting story with him. All right, but yeah, I heard he died. That's what I had heard. He had died. I had some people wanting to buy that from me and buy the manuals and other stuff, but it's a trip. I just had called him because after I was recovering from the hospital at home, a friend of mine that owned a really successful downtown bar wanted to come to me and talk to me about these beings that he thought it's one old building downtown where I live here. And he said that there were these beings that would come into the bar that he was sure weren't people, but they look like people. And I've talked to Bigfoot Michigan Rob about this a little bit because he said he poured some drinks for some ghosts one day or something. But John had said, he said, man, he said, I used to have to watch you sometimes, Littleton. I said, why? He said, sometimes you came in the bar and one of the partner that he had of the bar had died. And he said, you came in one night, you're just standing there. He said, I turn around, you're just standing there. And you said some things about Matt that owned the bar that were really just heavy, man. And some things about what he was communicating from the other side. He said, then I turned around to get you. Back in the days when you had the old Michelob with the whole gold top on it. You had to actually twist off. That was some good beer. He said, I went and turned around to get you a Michelob. And when I turned back around with it, man, you were gone. He said, you were nowhere around. He said, you've always just disappeared like that. But that's because I used to study invisibility and I used to try it. And then I started having spontaneous invisibility, spontaneous human invisibility. And it would happen and I couldn't control it. It was just weird. People were telling me, man, you just disappeared and stuff. And I wouldn't even try to do the Batman where he runs away when nobody's watching. I wasn't even trying to do that. It was just manifesting. You start putting energy out there and sometimes there's a time lag and stuff starts manifesting. Anyway, he said, those they come into the bar and they do that. I said, what are you talking about, John? He said, man, there are these individuals that come in and they just stand around for just a little while. And they've got this bad energy to them and they never order anything and then they're just gone. And right after they leave, fights break out in the bar. There's a problem of some type. Something negative happens every time I see one of these individuals. And he starts telling me, he's like, Littleton. This cat looked like Leave It to Beaver, Larry Mondello from Leave It to Beaver. People used to call him that. He looked like that cat. And he'd be like, Littleton. I think that they are actually spirits that roam around downtown Old Town. I think they roam the buildings down there, certain ones. Who was I going to say, hey, I think you're wrong? What was I going to say? I thought it was fascinating, you know? He was quite aware of many things. So anyway, food for thought on that. Sorry, I'll try to wrap this up. Anyway, thanks for that, J Truth Seeker. Yeah, he was an interesting guy. When I asked him, I said, man, what's the most interesting jump you've had with that resonator? He's all about. I jumped to the Cretaceous period. And I think he said Triassic, the Triassic period, and those Tyrannosaurus Rex. They had feathers. They were trying to eat me up. Don't ever jump to that time period. They'll eat you immediately before you can even get the machine to get back. You can get back. And he never told me how he came back with the machine. You can't take it with you. Do you just automatically kind of vibrate back? Is that what happens and resync with your timeline or what? He never explained that. But he said that that he almost got ate by Tyrannosaurus Rex and they had feathers. Impressive. Obviously, he studied dinosaurs because they just admitted that at that time that they were feathered. Okay, the other thing he tells me is this. He tells me he used the machine and he jumped to the pearly gates and St. Peter, that's what he said, right? St. Peter wouldn't let him in. And they got into an argument and St. Peter sent him back. Now, look, when this guy is telling me this, I'm basically seeing an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David when he died and he went to heaven and the cats, he's trying to get in the gate and the cat's he's arguing with the angel up there. And our angel saying, man, get your ass back. Go back. I swear it seemed like he was stealing that episode or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. So there's stuff like that. And then when I called him like that last time, I had made some other sketches. I took that machine apart again, and I figured out totally how it ran and what the caduceus coil actually is, which is nothing but a circular copper wire, okay? But it does interfere with the time with the time field to a slight degree with the electromagnet. And excuse me, I just I caught it, and I made some sketches. I was like, man, I could change some things in there that I think would actually make it generate closed time-like curves. And also the fact that there's no field integration circuit in there is very dangerous. So I mentioned that to him. And he went off on me. He called me an SOB. You SOB. You soulless alien hybrid. I don't want to hear that crap from you. The only reason my device wouldn't work on you fully is if you're one of those soulless alien hybrids. I never told the cat I had contact or anything like that, you know? He said, I said, oh, it's definitely that. I'm a hybrid. It's not this is a piece of junk that doesn't work. It's not that, right? It's not. It does some things. I think it's good for telepathic communication, but it's not going to jump me time-wise anywhere. And he got really mad at me, and I wound up hanging up on him. I told him to F off, kiss the testicular nuts and go on. Or what? I'm sorry. Suck it. Hey, suck it, Stephen Gibbs. I hung up. We never talked again. And I heard later that he had died or something. So I don't know. He was from my state, actually. He was trying to make it like it's all mysterious and stuff. But he was from my state. I could trace it by the area code. I was like, but the reason I mentioned my friend John just come by while I was healing. And he was wanting to telling me he was going to sell his bar. And he was saying also, man, he goes, man, you used to listen to Art Bell all the time, didn't you? I said, yeah. He goes, man, there was a deal about a time traveler. Dude said he made a time machine on there. I was listening to that. He just wanted to talk about it. So we were talking about it. And when he left, I got this wild hair and, I guess. And I just Googled the cat and I found him. I found these videos of these cats calling him, mocking him, saying he was weird and he's going to send him a time machine. And I went back and listened to Art Bell. I found his number and I just called the cat. We started talking. you know. But I must say, overall, outside of just the intrigue of playing with the type of slight time technology and gosh, what do we call these things? I think we want to call it a platonic device. But if you go on YouTube and look up the wishing machine and that guy that has all those different things that were part of borderline um, sciences, they call these pads these things that you use to you just rub the God. What are they called? That's really bothered me that I don't know that. It's a very simple word. Anyway, I can't think of it. But that's the whole deal with him. He was just that was, and so many people are so interested in him and in that device and everything. It's partial junk, man. But the other stuff he had in those journals, a few of them, especially the handheld one, he's got a handheld teleporter thing or something. It looked like it had promise. And I've yet to find my friend. The reason why I gave him those journals, he's got engineering background. I want to see if if he can make one, just to see if it works. You know what I mean? Anyway, great show. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Invisibility. If you are talking about Sasquatch and invisibility, you might want to go to the channel, go to the playlist, go to Sasquatch, and look at the. I did one over Sasquatch and invisibility. Check out the stuff that's talking about the oil and the different ways they might be able to distort the visual field before even using something metaphysical. Hopefully it wasn't a gugwe. You know, I've said it before. I think the gugwe are introduced species to discredit the patty type of Sasquatch. I think they're monsters. And I think they're monsters that are driving out the good bit of Bigfoot, or at least the ones that don't mean people harm. I think they're driving them out of those areas. I'd heard that twice. And, you know, it was that guy named Rodney, and he was on. Who is Cam? That dude Cam. Cam, he does a Sasquatch something. His name is Cam. He does the stories sometimes too. I don't really listen to those as much, or like the long stories, but he does his encounter. He has people on sometimes. He had that guy Rodney on there, and Rodney said he was from Paris, Texas, or East Texas, and he was part of that habitation. And he said that he knew he was part of how MK Davis got those videos from there, which was like Whitey's Run, which I think is a really good one. The fence climber, the tall Paul, and those ones all came from that property. And then that guy Rodney he said, but let me tell you, those ones we've been interacting with for years are getting driven out now, and they're getting driven out. And he's going, but he kind of got a little. I don't know what to tell you. They're just monsters. He said they're monsters, and he started describing them with the elongated snout. He's describing those guggies over time. And he said they seem to be more solitary. But I've heard things about them being more clan-like these lately. So I don't know, but he said that they were sent there to drive out the patties type. He believed that, and he kept calling them monsters. And he said, "You get caught with one of those, one of those, alone or in a enclosed area, you're in big trouble." So that was interesting, and I never heard that Cam did another interview with that guy Rodney. Jessica, I don't know if you were able to find out who he was either, but that was a fascinating deal. Excuse me. Maybe I'll see if I can't find it and post it or something. I've got it bookmarked in my deal. Boondock Mojo. Yes, please do email it to me. I'd love to see it. BarryLittleton13@gmail.com, and thank you. Hey, Amy, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, Jessica. Don't worry. I'm not going to hold you on much longer. I keep saying that, but I get carried away on these. I love blue people, and they do exist. Very interesting what the Uranta book says about the blue race. Very interesting, you know, and also what the doggone say about blue, too. It's common reading about Nordic aliens, and usually they're associated with benevolence, but I rarely see any testimony about black aliens. That's why I found it quite interesting. Word, Susan, or that might not be Susan. That's Senator Phoenix. Yeah, I've been going on about that from the beginning, and you know how much heat I took about that. At first, I got heat because people say, "Oh, you're a racist." No, I'm not a racist. I'm just bringing up that it's not equal, and we don't hear about black aliens. Since God permitted me to have the small platform that I've had over a dozen people come to me, contactees, say they've had an experience, starting with one of them being Matthew Morning. Now, Matthew's real cool. And we did a video, and I don't know, Journey to Truth I know they got shut down, but we did, after their conference I went to, that Jessica was at, probably a week later, I did an interview with Matt and him on there. And Matt went into talking about the melanin dominant extraterrestrial he'd encountered. And I think he talked about it on Jessica's show when she had him on too. But he described encountering one that would be a type of a praying mantis hybrid, one of them. Okay. And those are the ones that I've heard several times. And he had described this being during a dance in front of him when he first saw it. It like, I can't remember if he said it, like the smoke that came in, did it materialize and it's dancing in front of him, and how he's mesmerized by the dance. That immediately took me to something I had heard about these beings, these praying mantis beings, that hybrid, that have the ability to actually, when you meet them, they go into this dance, and it's like something like an hour long or something. It's really long time. They dance in front of you, and it's mesmerizing. And when they do it, they've got, as these hybrids, they have like an extra elbow joint here and an extra, neck part, and just different functions. Kind of like those beings from the original Arrival, the one with Charlie Sheen, the original Arrival. You remember it was a trip because the end of that, that brother that had been running around with that little kid, he turned his legs backwards. He ran off in the field. Anyway, but somewhat similar to that. But when you see them dancing like that, they're making these movements. And after watching it so long, you try to mimic it. But it's really hard because we don't have those type of joints. But the way it was described to me is that's these beings' ways of saying hello. A really graceful way of saying hello. That's a long, like 2-hour introduction. A totally different way. And we start dealing with really dance and with song, with movements, whole nother thing going on. Center of gravity, all these things. So for that reason, I found that, very interesting, but I think it needs to be talked about much more. And that's one reason I did that video with Corey Good. When Corey Good, I mentioned before, when I met him, and it was just a weird deal because the Australian dude walking me over to meet him is swinging from his nuts, okay? And I told him, I said, "You sound like you're swinging, man." "What, bro? What do you mean, bro?" I said, "You sound like you're swinging." Is it swinging from his testicles like this, And then I thought, oh, God, I'm being rude to this cat. So we walked on over there, you know what I mean? And then the cat tries to hug me. When he said, first I sat down, I can't give him a nod. He nods at me. And he jumps up right after that, runs over real quick trying to hug me. And I let him do it so I could just get a read on him, because I'm not really a hugging type unless you're a good-looking woman. Sorry. Anyway, but I got a read on him. And that's what he's telling me. "We did another conference together, right?" I was like, "No, man." He's looking at me real weird. He's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm sure." I've been at that point 6 or 7 of them. I said, "You weren't any of them. It's the first time we met." And he sat back down, and I can usually go to those conferences. Nobody really notices me until I might maybe do a presentation. And so people are coming over talking to me, and there are people waiting to talk to Corey. And this punk Australian cat Bogan is standing here, and he tells nobody's talking to him. He goes to Corey, "Oh, bro, Barry wants to do it. He wants to talk about black extraterrestrials, and he's got an audience that will listen." And Corey jumped up just like that. "I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it." And we went the next day, went down, and made that video y'all saw, and it was pretty good. I thought it was interesting. But when he starts talking about who now he conveniently has a name for him now, the Zulu. Okay, now didn't have it then, but he's describing them as using the Makos connect to the individual molecules or cells of our bodies, which is true. I talked to Rudy Shields about that equations. But how they use that for intergalactic and galactic teleport, and how they're unconquerable by technology by most races. And that went viral. People are all on that. But when he describes these Zulus, they sound a lot like those black praying mantis hybrids. Check out Daniel Kell's book. Daniel Kell, oh gosh, what was it called? Hold on. Oh, sorry, I should know that. How am I? Tell you what I will do. I'll show you a picture actually. Double Trip. The name of his book is Double Trip. And it's not, as far as publishing, I don't think it's real easy to find right now still. Here. And he gave a couple of representations of these beings. Oh, that's not it. Sorry. There it is. That's one. Daniel Kell, Double Trip. And in that book, he gives a few things. He talks about a spaceship they had and a power system. A power system was a type of a pyramid that had these staglamites around, or these what do you call them? Not poles around them, but these those anyway, it's got these things around it, and it's a power source. And he talks about these beings and how, and I've heard this before, these beings have these triangles on their forehead. And that's what Matthew said the being he saw had was a triangle on his forehead. And that's these black praying mantis. We hear a lot about the praying mantis beings, but we never hear about the black praying mantis, the melanin dominant praying mantis. And we've got them here on this planet. Anybody can Google that. Google black mantis, and they'll come up, and it starts taking us into that. And these beings that might actually come from negative matter, negative dark energy, okay, that is melanin. We have to start dealing with that a little, and we don't, Anyway, I'll show you one more Daniel Kell picture real quick, and he also said there's a Caucasian being he had encountered from there too. Here, I'll show you the machine the double pyramid machine that he showed. And he said this was inside of the ship. Oh, there it is. Sorry. He said that was the power source for this ship he was on board. And they took him to his place too, to their planet. And I found that kind of interesting, For some reason, you know what it reminds me? It kind of reminds me of the Black Pyramid on the original Thundercats that Mum-Ra had. There's always the thunder all around it and stuff, which was traditionally run by the ancient evil spirits. He had the Calderon in there, and they were always talking to him, Mum-Ra. Anyway, his pyramid kind of reminded me that on the Thundercats. But Daniel Kell said that was on board the melanin dominant black praying mantis beings. That was the engine power source for that. And I'll do one more Daniel Kell, and then I'll probably get out of here pretty quick here. Get a bit hungry. Just talking about catfish, and my mind is on catfish, or therefore lack of, because I ain't got none right now. And I think it's just cool to show this because it gets like Phoenix said, this is not talked about enough. And it's not that everybody's racist. I'm not saying that. But when we bring awareness to this, it's not discussed enough. It changes things. And I think that's what's taken us into type 1 civilizations. That's another one from his book. Telepathy. He said, when in the presence of that being, you got a total download. Extreme. Yeah. So, stuff like that. He's another person talked about it. Another one is somebody had mentioned earlier, which was the being, the book, God, is written by Michael Desmarquet. What's the name of that book? Um, um, Not Thanos. What was the name of that book? Oh, see if I look it up real quick. I should know that. Um, wow. Thanaba. I think it's Thanaba is the name of it. Journey to Thanaba. Thio. Well, okay. Anyway, God, what is the name of that? But it's some Thanaba, something like that. But he talks about actually interacting with melanin dominant female or androgynous species that were from around the area of Centaurus, the constellation of Centaurus. And he went on about that a little bit. He talked about a type of Olmec beings that are there too. And it was interesting, just another one that got with that. Journey to Thanaba. I think that's the name of that book. Journey to Thanaba. Let me see if I look it up. It's right here. But his illustration and description of this androgynous, almost hermaphrodite race of beings was quite interesting. How he says at first he thought they were all females, and then when he said something, do you have any men in your society? And they said, there are no women or men in our society. And this when he realized then it was like, wow, okay. He started looking at some of them that have more broad shoulders and jaw lines. He said that they're both. So androgynous hermaphrodites, but that's what their race has always been like. So stuff like that is, quite interesting. Sorry, I can't. Journey to Thigh, I should be able to find a picture of that. I've got several pictures in that video in the book, but I can't. Hey, he said he looked up at Jimmy's guys. You just said a Bigfoot with a big nose. You to Jimmy Church. I don't know which Jimmy you're talking about there, Amy. But yeah, a Bigfoot with a big nose, very interesting. Yeah. Anybody look up Jimmy Durante and check out his nose. He had a big one, man. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. But when you look at the hairdress of that type of Eben, also that was reported at was it Holloman's base? The gentleman said that those cats that came out had those headdresses and those big noses and those staff things with them too. So yeah, that's always interesting. And I've always heard that they're the ones that are more in control of the biological cyborgs, like the grays, the other types of grays that are more mechanical cyborg like. I don't know how true that is, where the rank goes between them and the tall whites and all the other stuff. Sasquatch Project ran by his son Travis. T Carp, I think T Carp does a good job. He does a good job, I think. I like it. He's walking out in the forest. He said he still wants to see no Sasquatch. But it's cool of him to still carry on the work, I think Scott Carpenter did a lot of good work. Especially, I was unaware for a while how involved he was with the Sasquatch Genome Project. So that's pretty interesting too. Really good chat, folks. Wow. Wow, everybody's still going talking. Telepath and telekinetic, the ability to become invisible in astral travel. Yeah, like I said, it was oftentimes spontaneous human invisibility. When I had first learned, you learn like when you start studying like ninja techniques and stuff like that, you learn how the eye operates. First it sees movement, then uh, or outline, then color. So just by knowing that, how it operates in that way. So if you have something that's not moving, you're not creating a silhouette, and there's no color to distinguish it, people are at extreme disadvantage, especially because we have something called the LOS, line of sight. Most people never look much more up or down unless you've been trained or see movement. You know what I mean? So that's one thing there. And also black and white, and the peripheral is in black and white. You think it's not, but it really scientifically is. And that's why a lot of us will see spirits in peripheral. It's black and white. But once you just know that the cones and rods of the eye operate out like that, it's much easier just to even do a Bruce Wayne on somebody. He was doing that all the time. But when you take it to the next level and start trying to use the molecules of your body to produce that electron cloud that will actually bend the light around you, whole nother level on that. But those are things, invisibility techniques. That one was recommended. The electron cloud, what was that guy's name? There's a good book on that. I've done a video on invisibility. It's in there somewhere. Sorry. 6'9", 522. Stephen Gibbs eventually went off on me too. Well, he's a little bit mentally unhinged. I mean, did he give you that, man? Did he give you the Larry David story, man? Was he telling he was up there arguing with St. Peter? I mean, when he's telling me that, I'm sure there was spirit somewhere looking at my face, wondering, because it had to be quite comical. Probably about as comical as when I went to go see the Flash movie and I ate that damn gummy and was falling asleep because that movie was terrible. Every time I start going out, I'm sitting. I mean, there's nobody in the theater at all. Two people over there. That's nobody. So I'm sitting in the prime middle of the deal. And unless he's running and they're blowing something up, I was sitting up there going like that. But since he's running with himself to stop his mother from being killed, he's talking to himself and yelling at himself, and his name is Barry. So he's Barry, wake up! I sit up there, that was tearing me up. I know there was spirits laughing about that. Start dozing off again. Barry, pay attention! Barry, it's not working. I want to stand up that whole movie praying that at some point Michael Keaton would show back up as Batman for just another scene. Anyway, the horrible CGI at the end, that's $12 I'll never get back. I'm gonna maybe go see the new Predator movie tomorrow if I have time for a matinee. I really want to see it. They say it's supposed to be really good. The new Predator movie. I didn't see the other one all the way through, the last one before that, so I don't want to be too far behind, but I like the Predator series. I think they're pretty good. Mark just said that, Barry. Oh, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about there. I had a disembodied ghost last week. Caught on GoPro 12. I think my area where I live have Bigfoot predators in the city. I've been hearing so much about Bigfoot in the city lately. Even David Pauletti's, I think, did a thing about that. A lot of people are talking about that. Not just the trash cans, but the rivers and things that come through these cities. And I'm hearing again more about Bigfoot stealing like shirts and like little ones wearing shirts, like how people's laundry lines. I think that's kind of interesting. I've heard that. I know Jessica's heard that a few times with the Bigfoot wearing shirts. The first time I heard that was years ago. I just thought it was odd. I was like, man, it'd have to be a little one to get on a person's shirt. But anyway, wow. Now my question, Bernard, is GoPro 12. Is that a spirit box, a voice box? Must be an active area. Everybody's talking about it. Very cool chat, everybody. Wow. I appreciate you all being here. Oh, I thought I was do everybody. I'm not. That's cool you guys are talking like that. Bernard Fox, I believe it. I've seen black guys with blue eyes. Girls like 70, no context, real blue. You know, you've got those brothers over in Panama, they've got blue eyes like that. And there's some with green eyes who got blue eyes like that. And my brother, my oldest brother, his eyes are bluish, as to where mine are more hazel. My other brothers are more hazel. My other brothers, his are a little got a blue tinge to them. You know, it's the doggone, and others talk about the smaller blue beings, humanoids that came down here and were working with people down here, and then the firmament fell. And when the solar radiation started invading, they got trapped here, and it turned them from blue to a dark black. And they're given a certain type of melanated black person in Africa that they say was related to those beings once the firmament fell, that they became part of the black population here. So stuff like that. I've been hearing that stuff since the 90s when I would go down to the bookstore and check out stuff. And it might have been the Urugu book that said that too. If you're familiar with the Urugu, that's an eye-opening book right there for sure. Wow. You all are quite brilliant in here. Quite brilliant. One other thing, Bernard, too. Now, my oldest brother Reggie, he's one of my siblings that's had encounters. Not like mine, but he's had encounters. I mentioned before, he's a musician. So the beings will always use music to kind of communicate with him. And he had an experience that involved these several brothers in this band that looked like that. They had blue eyes, and some of them had like almost blondish hair, but a little bit darker than my brother and I are. He described them quite prolifically, and that they had these instruments he'd never seen before. Something that sounded similar to having the effect of a theremin, those theremin devices. But this was some type of one of them put one on my brother. It's like a belt. And he said it was so good looking. He said, I don't know why, but for some reason I took the key I had and I struck the key around it and made this sound. It lit up. He said, when I did this guy walks up and say, hey, buddy, that sounds pretty good. He said, then I'm just standing with this band and I'm doing that with the thing and it's making this beautiful sound. And I'm playing music with these brothers. And he says, but then the belt, I wasn't supposed to be doing that with it, and the key tore it up and it stopped working. And then after that, these ships came up. And he starts looking at these brothers saying, now I understand, stuff like that. But he said these ships were kind of pyramid looking. They were very small. And he described them dancing around, creating these colors within them as they're spinning around and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Maybe someday I'll get him to come on one of these with me and tell you what he experienced. He's 18 years my senior. So it's just interesting. The music sometimes, the ways that the star beings choose to communicate with us is different. Another thing he does that I don't is he has these incredible astral projections. And he's always had them, I guess, and for me, I got to work at that type of stuff. He just gets burned out and starts leaving his body. He said, it always starts when I hear the hum. He said that I can just take off, man, when it happens. He said, it only happens when I'm really wiped out, though, after a big gig. So for him, it's all connected musically in that way. He talks a lot about like the theremin produces those sounds that the atmosphere carries. They're supposed to be very healing frequencies, healing sounds that we don't hear much. And, for that record, black holes also create a sound when they collide. Super black holes, I think that has a lot more to do with things than we think also. Imhotep, Darcy, really good book I used to have. It's called The Secret Waters of the Great Pyramid by Abdul Mumin. And he talked about Imhotep the first time I heard him in depth, and how they were describing there that he was the first person to chase the dragon. said he made meth. He made meth. He's a chemist of some type too. And then it talked about how he designed the step pyramid, and how the step pyramid was the first pyramid. It was designed to actually pull the water from the artesian well that funds the Nile, so they could inundate and have water during the time that before the Nile would inundate each year. They go that dry deal they would go through. It's very interesting. It also talked about a type of an orgone chamber type of thing that would be taken up and put inside the capstone or next to the capstone. How the pharaoh would get in there like once a year and go up there for like several days, and then when he come back down, he'd be like 10 years younger. It's some sort of a deal like that. And they were in that book, they were putting it mathematically with the same reason that when you put actually a razor blade in one of those pyramids, it gets resharpened. Something about it's similar to that, kind of like how the levitation technology for the pyramids making also had something to do with the same mathematical formula that involves why a sugar cube floats in water. It's got something to do with that buoyance, something like that. And I picked that up. But anyway, I'm not a mathematician. I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out there. Let's see. Thalba. Yeah, I think New England dirt roadie. Yeah, Thanaba. I think that's not the right spelling, but yeah, it's Thanaba. And that dude's name is Michael Desmarquet. I know that for sure. And he's done actually he's done a few interviews. He's got a couple hour interviews. He gets up there and he's talking. You can search that on YouTube. And it's interesting because there's only a few accounts of melanin dominant extraterrestrials, and it goes hard. You don't hear a lot about the Triangulum galaxy. The Triangulum galaxy that will collide with the Milky Way and Andromeda at one point. But M33, I think it is, M33, the Triangulum galaxy, you've got melanated giants that came here epochs ago, millions of years ago. Okay, the ones that we see, a few statues of them, they're showing that the littlest of them was like 25 feet tall. So we start looking at things like Lord Hanneman and those quote unquote gods that was here back then, their size, start looking into that a lot. I recently was talking to Jock Doubleday about those giant footprints, how they say those are Lord Hanneman's footprints, and he jumped from mountain to mountain. But what's interesting about Lord Hanneman is that he was described as having a tail, though, like almost a monkey tail. Okay, and there's a group of beings that are called is it Harash? But they're these type of monkey beings that have been said to be seen in these forests near those one of those giant foots, doing like some sort of a ceremony, worship ceremony. But they're like described as being these monkey beings too, with tails, opposed to how Sasquatch normally is not described as having a tail. Not even the type 2 that are supposed to be chimpanzee-like. No tails described. So I find that part about Lord Hanneman rather interesting, Anyway. Oh, sorry, Amy. I got you now. That's who Scott said is Bigfoot. Bigfoot looked like. Oh, Scott Carpenter. Sorry, Amy. I was a little lost. Okay, Bigfoot looked like Jimmy Durante. You're talking about? Yeah, Durante. The Snoz. Just look up the comedian The Snoz. He'll come up. He had a big old one, man. Kind of hooked down. Anyway. Theobo Prophecy. Michael Desmarquis. There you go. I'll be honest with you, man. I wasn't super impressed with that book. It was good. I like most what he's talking about, those androgynous life forms or race. I thought that was cool. But the one problem I have, him saying the amount of time he was gone to that planet, I just don't buy it. You know what I mean? I'm not sure we can even survive that long on another planet like that. I could be wrong though. You know what I mean? It just a few things in his story I kind of found questionable. But nonetheless, like I say, can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's interesting. I thought his description of their spherical craft and other things like that was quite interesting. And when you start dealing with things like the legend of Wonder Woman and Thera and stuff, and dealing with the black Andromedan dreadlike woman we've heard about. Okay, they're supposed to be much similar. They're supposed to be androgynous too. And when we talk about the braids and things, we were talking about the braids of the Andromedan women are supposed to be very energetic in that way also. That's even been translated to like the predators. The predators have that. And that's supposed to be a thing with their strength and breathing apparations and all sorts of stuff. So I think that's just, interesting. We start seeing how some of this is represented in the entertainment system. Barry did the voice of Panthro from the original Thundercats. That's real funny. Do you want to know who really the real voice of the original Panthro was from the Thundercats? It was the brother who played Bill Cosby's dad on The Cosby Show. Light-skinned brother. I can't think of his real name. He played it every episode every time he showed up. It was always played his dad. Think about that, brother. Think about his voice. Now think about Panthro. I like Panthro, man. That was a good character, I thought, always. Oh. The whole concept of superheroes is pretty stupid to begin with. I don't agree at all. Not at all. I think it's a good entertainment. And in reality, if you start really doing your research and what they say about the individuals that were Greek gods and what they were capable of, you really start doing your research about the prince's staff and the other beings that come here that interbreed with us, you see where a lot of these superhero things come from, especially ones like the Kryptonians. That's all stuff based on ancient alien type of stuff theory, ancient astronaut, I guess I should say. So don't dismiss the bathwater with the baby with the bathwater. If you're my age, heck, we're the age of the 70s. We wish we had crap like they're doing right now with superheroes. All we had was what my friend Jerry Daly worked on, the Super Friends. That was about it. And then later on you had a couple of shows that started popping up, after George Reeves and all them. But I mean, it wasn't like Spider-Man, and that was terrible. God, it was a terrible Spider-Man. That sorry web shooter, and then the platform boots. When he would jump up on the rope and he'd be walking across the buildings with the platform boots, it was terrible. But that's all right. That's all we had back then. And I'll be honest with you. I recently saw Spider-Man Home Away it was. I was disappointed that Nicholas Hammond was not invited to be in that movie. They had every other cat that played Spider-Man pop out of that portal but him. Yes, he's an old man, because I remember him before Spider-Man. He was in Oklahoma. He was one of them characters. The Sound of Music. He's one of the people sitting up there with the kids sitting up there with the. Anyway, that's interesting, but I just don't agree with that. I think that's a little bit harsh. And entertainment-wise, it's not bad, But a lot of that is based on Greek mythology when you look at it. Boom. Forgot about the Predator movie. New Predator, Home Quest. Sorry, I didn't see you in here. Welcome to the chat. And the new Predator is really good. Thank you. That gives me the motivation I need to go see it. Everybody I've talked to yesterday was a game at my university, and everybody was talking about it. After the game, they were saying, man, it was really a good movie. I was like, man, they all went and saw it in opening. So that's cool. I'm going to check it out. Prey was really good. See, I haven't seen all of Prey. I've seen just little parts of it. And then when it does, of course, the famous bear fight, which was cool, man. It's just cool. What was one of the Predator movies I didn't like much was Predators. And I think that's when the problem I had when they're on the planet, the problem I had with that was that the Predators themselves were running too slow. They're like these giants running in slow when they're running there. Do. The first movie, they didn't move like that at all. That cat was using the trees. He was jumping around quicker than the primate would. You know what I mean? You can tell they come from a heavier gravity planet. So here they're much lighter, even though they're big. So I thought that was not well showed from that other movie. Just now, and there's the one with they make the other Predator too. It's like some sort of a hybrid that crushes the other Predators, and it's running around. It was kind of cool, but it seemed like it was a little stretchy, Anyway, I like Predator 1 and Predator 2. I think were really, really good. Straight up, the best two. A lot of people don't like Predator 2. But I'll tell you, if nothing else, you gotta like the fact that most of those Predators at the very end scene were the L.A. Lakers. You know, I think James Worthy was one of them. James Worthy played a Klingon on Star Trek Next Generation too. You know, there's still stuff like that we gotta appreciate. I saw the Predator movie. It's good. Inner Mystic 144. Oh, good reviews. Saw my Bigfoot in a creek. You know, the state I'm from, you would think there'd never be any Bigfoot sightings, but there have been a few, and they've been sighted. You know, oftentimes breaking mussels or something or clams in a river, in a creek rather. Sorry. Bigfoot and Dogman. Oh, Dogman wearing clothes. I ain't heard that one yet, Jessica. That's pretty frightening. I wonder if that means they're more werewolves than Dogmen. Amy, Michael Keaton, and Val Kilmer were my favorite Batmans. Oh, what the hell? No Adam West? Come on, Amy. You had to like him. That was a terrible. I mean, he must have put a Batman suit on me. That cat was horrible. Look, he had the right voice, but that body, he did not look like a superhero or nothing. That was terrible. Then they're out there doing these are doing all that stuff, the dancing and stuff. Or the one I saw the other day, it was a clip came through him and he was on it with the Joker on a surfboard with the utility belt still on, and they're going like this, and it was so fake looking. I said, "My God, I can't believe that stuff stayed on." As my brother would say, even even back then, that was sorry. I think my favorite Batman would probably be Michael Keaton. He did a good job. You know, I think Christian Bale did a good job too, but he was just a little too short. He didn't look Bruce Wayne size. Excuse me. That's the only thing. So okay. Before I get out of here, I'm gonna ask y'all this question. All right, for each one of y'all, let me know this: who was your favorite Batman? Who was your favorite Superman? Who was your favorite Spider-Man? And most importantly for me, who was your favorite Doctor Who? Because they've had, 16 Doctor Who's. Who was your favorite Doctor Who? I'll tell you, okay, so my favorite Doctor Who was Tom Baker, hands down. My favorite Spider-Man, I think probably Tobey Maguire was really good one. But that new guy, Tom Holland, he's pretty good as both. But Tobey Maguire, I thought was pretty good. My favorite Superman, I think it's hands down Christopher Reeve. I mean, come on. If they could have done the effects that they do right now in his movies, it would have been great. And something I was talking with these cats sitting at the bar after the game last night. They were talking about the new Superman. I said, look, I wouldn't saw that. And I thought it was pretty good. And I went with a bad attitude, straight up. I thought it was going to suck. It was not that bad. And so people would kind of have a little debate because I said, I'm sorry. I think it was better than Man of Steel. Yeah, Man of Steel, his costume was cool and all that. And I like it when he jacked up the truckers' deal because they poured the beer on him or whatever. But, I mean, that was cool. But, I mean, my problem with Henry Cavill was, one, I thought the writing for those movies were not good. And that's not his fault. But the other thing was he was a little too short to be Superman too. And the other thing is, man, come on. He was cooler as Clark Kent than he was as Superman. He was cooler Clark Kent than even Bruce Wayne. That didn't jive. That's not the way Clark Kent's ever supposed to. That I thought was not good. The newer one I thought was good that everybody was mad because they said, oh, he was whining the whole time. He was kind of still learning his powers, it seemed like to me. A little bit better than Smallville, though. But, I mean, he was still learning his powers, and he was showing he was, humanity's more than just biology. He was telling people he screwed up a lot. A lot of people got mad about it. Superman wouldn't say that. Well, why not? He's a human, no matter humanoid. So, I don't know. I thought it was good. That cat, Tyler Hoechlin, or whatever his name is, I didn't see all that series, but I've seen a few of them. I thought he did a pretty good job. He wasn't better than Christopher Reeve or nothing, but all he had to pick up, I thought he did good. Brandon Routh, that was a terrible movie. That was one of the worst movies. That's another one I won't get my $12 back ever. Anyway, moving on. Sorry. The best Batman, like I said, I already went over that one. Spider-Man, Doctor Who. Yeah, what do y'all think? Let me know. Who's your favorite of each? I would almost throw no, I'm not gonna throw that in there. That's too corny, So we're not gonna throw no Wonder Woman in there. Linda Carter probably would win that. Oh, that was kind of a lame show too. I don't know. Anyway, I'll scroll down, see what y'all got to say, and I'm gonna get out of here. I appreciate everyone being here. And Jessica, thanks for hanging out the whole time. I said this wasn't gonna be long, and it was. Dog woman wearing earrings heard a story out of New Orleans. See, I wonder if that takes us into the wolf, the werewolf thing even more. Something else when it comes to black extraterrestrials, also, you've got like the Raven tribe and others that are producing artifacts saying that actually out of Africa is incorrect. It's out of Australia is where the first people emerged out of, but they were still black, melanin dominant. And the Raven tribe and the others, they're saying that they're from the Pleiades and they're made in their image. And the first Pleiadians here were black. And when you look at some of the Aboriginals I had met when I was in Australia, some of them are much darker than me, the color of my shirt here. So that means the first Pleiadians here were extremely melanin dominant. And we never hear about that, And I had that punk trick from Australia was the first cat to tell me that. We did a video on my channel and I'm jumping around like a little kid because it's exciting. And even to a point that some black contactees I interacted with, they had never heard that either. One of them being UFO twins. Oh gosh, what's her name? You want to call her Sherry. Her name isn't Sherry. Charlene Wallace. She contacted me, said, I saw that video about the black Pleiadians. We talked about it for a while. So when I first kind of started interacting with her. So yeah, anyway. Bill and Ted. Drinking fresh juice chlorophyll. Okay. Oh, sorry, y'all. I just went way far down. Lost a glass pipe in Bakersfield, California, 1 whole year ago. Sure, that was tragic. It would have been worse if you'd have broke it, though, right? Bakersfield. Isn't that where the CHP headquarters are? Do they show on chips? Oh. Smoke hot alien babes. This way. Oh, Tamara. Adam West for sure. Oh, you like some bat shark repellent? I remember when Michael Keaton got that movie. Adam West got mad. He told people, he said, well, that's all right. Everybody knows my Batman was more likable. Yeah, I remember Mom laughing, saying, that old bastard, he can't get in that suit anymore. He looked terrible back then. I said, Mama, I got to agree with that. But as far as the gimmick, man, it's hard to beat Batman on the surfboard with the utility belt. Oh, man. Gray Al. Both Vegas Backyard, Miami Mall X-rays, despite being polymorphous, shape-shifting, were all black with the white eyes, lack of better description. I did some work on those with Jessica. The Miami thing, I think, is not real. My niece lived out in Miami, and it still does. I think she's moving now. But I got issues with kind of both of those. But I did see an interesting unsolved mysteries with that brother, and they were talking about the backyard alien, and that one they didn't debunk. And Jessica says that the mate that she met moved like that. So the fact you do have some of these things bleeding through, and some truth in there. So that's interesting. Bakersville is the methville of America. Kentucky? Went over my head. Okay, that's everybody. I'm down at the end. Thanks everybody for being here. Gosh, this went 2.5. Oh man, just almost went 4 hours. The hell? Godly, man. Oh wow. Well, thanks everybody that stayed. God, as far as anybody stayed, that's way, way late. Oh my God. 4 hours? Wow. Well, I thank everybody for being here. I'm probably gonna start losing people on these streams because they're too long. I'll try to get it better next time. Next time it'll be an hour. You'll see. I'll do it. I promise. Next time I'll get everything so refined that I can just talk like this real quick, do it like this real quick, and then I get in the chat and it'll be done. I'll see all y'all later. Thank you for coming. Much love to everybody. Much energy. If you want services, please email me at barrylittleton13@gmail.com. I got a few of those to answer tonight. I set up sessions for hypnosis, for readings, whatever you might want. Negative identity dissolvement. Just give me an email. I'll be happy to work with you. I appreciate everybody coming here. I will be on Alexis Brooks' show this Tuesday afternoon, I believe. And I haven't been on her show in quite a while. And I'm surprised anybody still wants me on anything. So much love to everybody. Thank you all for coming here. And I'll catch up with you. Peace.